Okay, good evening everyone. Welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. This is Sham Kagur here. Now, before I start the discussion, if there is no issue with the sound, please give me a thumbs up. Let me know that I'm audible so that we can start the discussion. Done. Thanks a lot. So, yesterday, what we have done, we continued the discussion in agriculture sector. We continued with the discussion in the agriculture sector. What we have covered yesterday, we started with concept of food subsidy, right? How do we basically take care of food subsidies in India? Food subsidies are basically the expenditure that the government will incur to provide food grains. The schemes such as a public distribution system, National Food Security Act. So under that, how much expenditure will be incurred by the government to provide food grains to the beneficiaries? For example, under NFSA, National Food Security Act, two-thirds of total India's population, I repeat, two-thirds of total India's population will be covered. And for current financial year, there is no money that is collected by the government. Whenever they distribute the food grain, they are providing the food grains free of a cost. So we will calculate economic cost of food grains. Economic cost basically means how much is the overall expenditure incurred by the government to procure the food grains and store the food grains. Now, the procurement will be done by paying MSP, but apart from MSP, there are also procurement incidentals such as the mandi charges, the labor charges, etc., etc. Right. So we have seen how the MSP, I'm sorry, how the subsidy is calculated. Procurement charges, sorry, procurement cost plus procurement incidentals plus right the distribution cost, etc. That will give you the basic idea of a food subsidies. And if the state government has announced a bonus, we will include the bonus as well. After that, we have discussed reforms by the government in case of food distribution programs. For example, I hope you remember reforms such as One Nation, One Ration Card, ONORC, One Nation, One Ration Card. And we also have discussed food grain ATM, food grain ATM. Right, so those are the reforms which have been announced by the government to promote efficient distribution of food grains. After that, we have discussed concept of APMC, Agriculture Produce Market Committee. It's basically a concept wherein the government, state government to be very precise, will identify certain food grains, and these food grains have to be sold in a market. That market or yard is called as a mandi or APMC. There are certain issues regarding that, right? And in order to address these kind of issues, I hope you remember, government has introduced a new model called as E-National Agriculture Market, ENAM, E-National Agriculture Market. Under ENAM, we are going to interlink mandis. I'll repeat, under ENAM, we are going to connect mandis through a platform, and the food grains will be listed in a platform, and multiple buyers from different states will participate, bid for the food grains and purchase food grains. That's a model of e-national agriculture market. After that, we have discussed technology in agriculture sector, concept of drone technology, right? How drones are used in the agriculture sector, right? What is the importance of that? We have discussed silos technology, concept of silo technology for warehousing, the idea of the liquid fertilizers, that is nano fertilizers, in addition to EDAM, ONORC, etc. So we have discussed different types of technologies. After that, we started discussing food processing. Right? What is the basic meaning of a food processing? You're converting from one form to another form. You have one form of agriculture output, you'll convert that into one more form. In the process, you'll extend the shelf life, you'll extend the expiry date. Also, you'll extend or you'll increase the market price of the product. That process is called as food processing. Now, in case of food processing, what is the need? Lot of population is there in India, which has a demand for processed foods. India has the potential to produce a lot of these processed foods, export them to the international market. By processing, we'll be able to reduce the wastages, right? And the huge amount of expenditure incurred by the houses are done in the form of processed foods itself. So these are some of the reasons why government actually is promoting the idea for food processing. And in that, we have discussed certain important reforms. certain important reforms to promote food processing. For example, yesterday we discussed mega food park scheme. Correct? Mega food park scheme. We have discussed mega food park scheme. 100% FDI, 100% FDI in marketing of agriculture commodities. We also discussed a cold chain infrastructure schemes, etc. Certain more schemes are left out. Let me continue the discussion. A couple of more schemes, then we'll finish this chapter of agriculture. Right, one is Pradhana Mantri or Prime Minister formalization of micro food processing enterprises. Okay, PM formalization of micro food processing enterprises. Now, point number one, what do you mean by micro here? What do you mean by the term concept of micro enterprises? I'll come back to the slide. Do not panic. Please have a look at this particular picture here. Please have a look at this particular picture. Whenever you talk about industries, there is one classification by the name of micro, small, and medium enterprises. I'll go back to previous slide. Don't panic. All of you heard of this? Whenever you talk about enterprises in India, there is one classification of enterprises called as micro, small, and medium enterprises. Now, what do you mean by micro, small, and medium enterprises? This is the definition. Please by heart the definition. Simply note down and by heart this particular definition. We will divide the enterprises into micro, small, and medium enterprises based on two very important parameters. First one is how much investment is done in plant and machinery, in setting up a manufacturing facility, also purchasing machinery. How much investment has been done? And the second parameter is how much is the total sales revenue. Turnover is nothing but sales revenue that is generated by these enterprises. If any enterprise has an investment of up to 1 crore, I repeat, any enterprise has an investment of up to 1 crore and generates a revenue of up to 5 crore, we'll call this as micro enterprise. If any enterprise which has investment of more than 1 crore but up to 10 crore, but right will have a revenue of more than 5 crore and up to 50 crore, we'll call this as small enterprises. And finally, medium enterprises means any enterprise which has an investment of more than 10 crore rupees but up to 50 crore, but will generate or will also generate revenue of up to 250 crore. This is called as a medium enterprises. All of you okay with the definition? Can we go forward? All of you okay with the definition? Micro means what? You will invest up to 1 crore and you will generate revenue of up to 5 crore. Small means more than 1 crore but up to 10 crore, and revenue more than 5 crore up to 50 crore. And finally, medium means you will invest more than 10 crore up to 50 crore, and right basically you will generate revenue of more than 50 crore but up to 250 crore. Just to make it much more simple, let me make it much more simple. In fact, if you have seen the previous year question, previous year in the sense the civil services 2023, this was asked in the prelims. This was in fact asked in the preliminary examination. A statement was given on the table itself. Right, just to make it easier, can I say 1:5? 1:5 is the ratio that you need to remember. 1, 5, 10, 50, and 50, 250. All of you okay with this? 1:5 ratio, that is investment and revenue. 1 crore, 5 crore, 10 crore, 50 crore, and 50 crore, 250 crore. This is the basic ratio. Please remember this. Please remember this. One is the investment, second one is revenue. Revenue, turnover means revenue. Right? Many of you keep on asking me this multiple times. Right? I'm repeating it multiple times. Turnover means revenue. By selling goods or services, how much money you are generating, that is called as a turnover. Right? So 1:5. Now look at the table and please do tell me micro enterprises. Micro enterprises, point number one, can I say investment is very less? Please look at the table. Point number one, micro enterprises, investment is very less. Point number two, when they are investing, do you think they'll be able to invest in new type of technology to increase productivity? Think of it. Do you think they are able to invest in new type of technology, latest technology to increase productivity? No, that is not possible because the investment is up to 1 crore. Now, next point. Now, do you think these are competitive, very competitive in terms of, right, let's say exports? Do you think these are very competitive to give a very tough competition to bigger companies in India? Obviously, no. Right? You should understand. Obviously, no. Why? The investment is 1 crore. Investment is just 1 crore in plant as well as machinery. So, how can you give competition to bigger companies in India? How can you adopt a new type of technology? How can you compete with the international companies? How can you export more and more? Right, so there are limitations. All of you will agree there are limitations. These are very small, very, right, very limited in terms of investment. They find it very difficult to increase productivity, right, and the export competitiveness is very limited, and they will also find it very difficult to compete with other companies in India. Now, looking at all of this, government of India says, I will help these micro enterprises which are involved in food processing sector. I'll repeat the statement. Government of India says, I will help these micro enterprises which are there in the food processing sector. How? By providing subsidies. Very simple. By providing training to them, by providing subsidies to them. Right? Reason is that Government of India says, in the food processing sector alone, in the food processing sector alone, there are more than 25 lakh micro enterprises. There are more than 25 lakh food processing enterprises, and these have limited production, these have a limited investment, these are not able to increase productivity, etc. So I will provide them with subsidies so that they will increase production, they will be able to adopt a new type of technology, etc. That is, in essence, the concept of Pradhan Mantri formalization of micro enterprises. Now, why are we using the term formalization here? Why are we using the term formalization? Formalization simply means anything that is registered with the government, we call them as formal units. I'll repeat it. Any unit that is registered with the government, will call them as part of formal units. If they are covered under any of the laws of the government, if they are registered under any of the provisions of the government, we will call them as formal units. And right, think of it. Please think of it. Don't you think Government of India should have the data regarding how many micro enterprises are there in India? If you think the government needs the data for making policies, government needs the data for implementing various schemes, for providing welfare, or for providing support to these micro enterprises, etc. So for that particular reason, government has allocated, government of India has allocated 10,000 crore rupees for a period of 5 years, that is 2020 to 2025. And under this particular scheme, government says we will identify around 2 lakh micro enterprises and will provide them with subsidies. We will provide them with subsidies. Now, what kind of subsidies? There's a technical term here. I'll take a very simple example. Imagine you are the government. I'm a micro enterprise. You will give me a subsidy to purchase a machine. I'll repeat the statement. I'm a micro enterprise. You're the government. You will give me subsidies to purchase a machine. So can I say this is a subsidy related to capital? Let me know. This is a subsidy related to capital. Anybody has a problem? Machine is part of the capital only. And because this is a subsidy related to capital, can I call this as capital linked subsidy? Can I call this as capital linked subsidy? Suddenly UPC can use these kind of terms. Please don't get confused. Please do not get confused. You are giving me subsidies, that is, let's say a certain amount of money. I will have to use this money to purchase machines. Machines are part of capital only. Because this is a subsidy which is associated with the capital, I will call this as capital linked subsidies. And under PMFME, please remember, it is capital linked subsidies. So what is being provided under the scheme? Training as well as a financial support for upgradation of the technology, compliance and registration under different regulatory framework. Now please tell me, if government will give you subsidy, but you will have to be registered under one of the laws of government of India. You will have to get registered under one of the laws. Can I say you are becoming part of formal units in India? Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. Government says I'll give you subsidy, but you're not registered. Please get registered under this act, etc. Please get registered. I'll give you subsidies. Can I say government through these subsidies is promoting formalization, right? It is promoting formalization from informalization, right? So compliance and registration under different regulatory frameworks of government, marketing support for integration with organized supply chain, right? So these are some of the assistances, or let's say the support that is given by government under the concept of Pradhan Mantri formalization of micro enterprises, PMFME. Next initiative is a PLI, production linked incentive. PLI, production linked incentive. Now, earlier we have discussed a production linked incentive. I'll just give you 2 points here. Out of 14 industries which are covered under the PLI, food processing is one of them. I'll repeat the statement. Out of the 14 industries which are already covered under PLI, food processing is one of them. Second one is it has provided, that is Government of India has provided 10,900 crore rupees under PLI to promote food processing industries. Now please tell me, in the earlier sessions we have discussed PLI. Yes or no? In the earlier sessions, we have discussed a PLI or not, production linked incentive. And those are asking in which session, sir, in which chapter, sir? Please go back to the earlier chapter of international trade. In one of the slides, we have made a discussion about PLI. I've told you what is PLI, what is the need for PLI, what is the government of India trying to achieve through PLI, and what are the problems related to PLI, what are the concerns which have been raised by the government agencies itself regarding PLI. Okay. Now next one is Agriculture Infrastructure Fund, AIF, Agriculture Infrastructure Fund. I had mentioned this earlier. Let's have a discussion now. Agriculture Infrastructure Fund has been set up by Government of India, which will be implemented from the year 2020 till 2032. From 2020 till 2032. So for 13 years, this scheme or this fund will be implemented. Government of India set aside 1 lakh crore rupees under Agriculture Infrastructure Fund. Okay, Agriculture Infrastructure Fund. It has set up 1 lakh crore rupees. 1 lakh crore rupees. Now, what is the use of this 1 lakh crore rupees? Right? What is the utilization of these 1 lakh crore rupees? Utilization is simple. Government says, under this fund, Agriculture Infrastructure Fund, I'll be promoting development of post-harvest infrastructure in agriculture sector. I'll be promoting development of post-harvest infrastructure. Post-harvest infrastructure means what? Government will promote a development of, let's say warehousing. Government will promote a development of cold chain infrastructure. Government will promote development of food processing infrastructure. It will also promote a sorting, grading, and packaging infrastructure, etc. Right? So there are so many types of projects which are covered, and that is basically post-harvest. Post-harvest means after you cut the crops. After you cut the crops, that is called as a post-harvest. Right? So after you cut the crops, there are multiple types of infrastructure that is needed. So government will provide subsidies for development of all of these post-harvest types of infrastructure. That is the importance of Agriculture Infrastructure Fund. Right? So this is basically one more type of initiative provided or launched by the government to promote agriculture sector. Done. So these are certain various schemes which have been launched by the government regarding agriculture sector. Having said so, please understand my point here. Should you remember all the schemes? My recommendation, please do. Please do. Why? UPSC has the tendency of asking a question in mains exam related to food processing. It is related to food processing. Generally, UPSC has the tendency of asking one question in the mains examination. So in that particular case, suddenly, for example, there is one student who says, "Sir, you have mentioned only two terms under PLI, only 2 points under PLI in the food processing. Is it sufficient if a question is asked?" My dear, don't you know other points regarding PLI? Please tell me, what is the use of PLI? Don't you already know? How different do you think will be this PLI in food processing compared to earlier PLI that I've discussed? Very simple question, by the way. What is the object of PLI? Have you not come across it? We want to promote exports. We want to promote investment, right? We want to make India Atmanirbhar, self-reliant. Can you apply the same logic to even PLI in food processing industry? In addition to those, you can simply say by promoting food processing under PLI, will be able to reduce wastages, will promote right more value addition to the economy, etc. So all the points are there right in front of you. Please keep on assimilating these points. Assimilate as much as possible. Assimilate these particular points. Okay. So that would be my recommendation to you. Please do not think in economics, at least in economics, please do not think that everything is unrelated. No, there is definitely a connection with all these things that we are discussing. For example, think of it and do let me know whether this connection will work out for you. Can we say one of the ways to double the income of the farmers will be to promote food processing industries in India? Think of it and do let me know. Can you connect the dot? I'll repeat the statement, by the way. One of the ways to promote a doubling of income of the farmers will be to promote food processing industries in India. Can you make the connection? Of course, yes. You can give this as one of the recommendations, in fact. But we have not discussed all of this, right? In PPT or in the classroom, we have not discussed. Suddenly, UPSC will try to establish that connection. You should not think, okay, faculty did not discuss, so there is no connection between both of them. You will write in big two-letter, capital letter word like this. No, there is no way to double the income of the farmers, right, by promoting food processing industry. No, that is not how the system will work. So I hope you understand. There is a lot of connection. Just think of it. You'll be able to make a lot of connections, right? And that is how you need to apply what you have learned in the classroom when you are writing the examination. Okay. Now, with that particular caveat, let me continue. What are the challenges for food processing industry? What are the concerns or challenges? Point number one, please tell me, where do you think there is a highest demand for processed foods in India? Rural or urban part of India? I'll repeat the question again. Please tell me, where do you think there is the highest demand for processed foods in India? Urban India or rural India? Answer is urban India. Some of us saying rural. No, my dear. The highest demand for processed foods in India comes from urban market. And if you ask me, sir, how can you prove that? How can you say so? Reason is simple. The lifestyle in urban India is a lot different, comparatively a lot different compared to rural India. In a rural India, they believe more of a traditional food consumption, whereas in case of urban India, the lifestyle is different. The per capita incomes are very high, and that is the precise reason people prefer to consume lot of processed foods in urban India. Can I prove it? Can I prove it? Please look at the ads that are there. Ads. The kind of ads you will see in the TV. Whenever you come across processed foods, can I say most of the ads are targeting urban population? Let me know. Can I say most of the ads that you come across is targeting urban population? And please understand, don't simply say, sir, for fun they are making ads. No, my dear. They spend crores of rupees to create an ad. Crores of rupees to create, right? To run it during, right? Let's say the World Cup, etc. Why should they go for a wrong targeting of a product, right? So argument is simple. Urban population has more right demand for the processed foods, but it doesn't. I'm not trying to say that there is no demand in rural India. I hope you understand my statement as well. I'm not saying there is absolutely no demand. I'm saying most of the demand comes from urban India. But don't you think there should be investment done by these companies? Products should be created, right? Investment should be done by these companies in research and development. New types of products should be created so that these products will satisfy the demand for rural market. Yes or no? These products should satisfy the demand for processed foods in the rural market as well, because no doubt rural market comparatively has lower demand. But where does most of the population in India reside? As per census of 2011, more than 60% of India's population comes from rural part, that is villages. So don't you think companies should invest money, invest lot of research and invest in research and development, create a new type of processed foods which are actually having a lot of demand from rural market as well. So that is one more recommendation or one more challenge that we need to overcome. In fact, I believe yesterday's business line. I hope so. You have read today's Hindu newspaper. Second article on railways. Second article on railways was there. That was very good. In fact, I hope you have read it. If not, please read it. Please read it. In fact, and please tell me, all of you are aware about what is happening for onion now. What is happening to onion prices? Right now, think of it. Just I'll take a detour like this. Just 1 minute. I'll take a detour. Can I say, in case of onion, it is basically supply shock inflation? Think of it and do let me know. In case of onion, it is basically supply side inflation now, right? But that is supply side inflation, specifically supply shock inflation. Supply shock inflation. And please tell me, did we come across the term supply shock inflation? Right? Suddenly there is right a disruption in right the supply of these food grains or goods or services, as a result of which the demand is higher, supply is very less, right? And that will cause lot of inflation. And please understand, lot of concepts are being discussed in the context of onion now. Suddenly, for example, there is a term called as a minimum export price. Have you come across this? Minimum export price. Minimum export price. Right? This was then the newspaper. For onion, Government of India has actually imposed a minimum export price. Suddenly, UPSC will ask you, what is minimum export price? Do not get confused. You will simply say, "Sir, I came up across minimum support price," but in the exam they ask me minimum support price, right, etc. Minimum export price means whatever exports you do, the price of the export cannot be below this price. Yes or no? Whatever export you're doing of onion, in case of onion, this has been imposed $800, right? So whatever exports you are doing, the price of it cannot be below this. Cannot be below this. That is called as a minimum export price. And have a look at this. If government will impose a minimum export price, can I say, because I cannot sell it at a lower price, cheaper exports will not be done now? Yes or no? I cannot do cheaper exports to the international market. And if I cannot export to the international market, what will happen to the supply to the domestic market? Supply to the domestic market will increase. And that will help Government of India in promotion of cooling of price levels. Supply will increase in the domestic market and it will help in cooling of the prices in the market. So please be very careful. Please be very careful related to all of this. Right? I discussed buffer stocks. Yes or no? Yesterday I discussed concept of buffer stocks in case of cereals. Right? Today in newspaper there was an article, business line, there was article regarding buffer stocks of onion. Government is procuring and keeping buffer stocks of onion so that they can cool down the market prices whenever the prices will shoot through the roof. So all these concepts we are discussing in the classroom are being applied in real life. Please keep on reading newspapers. I would recommend, strongly recommend, read newspapers. Okay, so one, lack of product development, right? Research and development has to be done. Second one is most of the demand comes from urban India. We need to promote even the consumption of it in a rural India. Third one, large number of micro or smaller enterprises, which means productivity is lesser, investment is also limited by these kind of enterprises. Next one is infrastructure bottlenecks. Infrastructure bottlenecks means infrastructure problems. Simple. Problems related to infrastructure. All of you will agree there are a lot of problems in infrastructure in India. For example, what about cold warehousing? What about normal warehousing? Cost of transportation, right? Cost of transportation, etc. So, infrastructure bottlenecks or infrastructure problems are also holding back food processing industries. Right? Next challenge is unorganized sector. Next challenge is unorganized sector. Right? A lot of these units are informal in nature. These do not have very large production. These do not have registration also. So we need to address the issue of unorganized sector. And finally, volatility in production. Right? I've simply written production here. Volatility. Volatility in production. Please tell me, volatility in the production, is it a challenge for food processing industry or not? For example, many of you ask me, how is that a challenge? Many of you ask me, how is that a challenge? I'll give a very simple example. You have invested, and that investment that you have done, using that investment, we can convert, I'll take a simple example, 100 tons of wheat. Understand the example? You have invested money and created a food processing infrastructure, and that infrastructure is sufficient to convert 100 tons of wheat into, let's say, bread or cake, for that matter biscuits or simply flour, etc. What if there is lower production in the domestic market because of, right, let's say very high rainfall or very low rainfall? As a result of this, don't you think you will arrive at a situation wherein you have lot of capacity, you have lot of machines using which you can convert, right, the food products, but you do not have sufficient supply of raw material? All of you will agree with me. You do not have a sufficient supply of the raw material. That basically means there will be idle capacity. Have you come across this? There can be issue of idle capacity. Idle capacity means, imagine you have 5 machines, but with raw material that is available right now, you can use only 3 machines, which means 2 of the machines are of no use for you. You have invested, but you cannot use those machines, right? So that impact it will have whenever there is a variation in the production or volatility in the production. Done, right? So these are some of the challenges for food processing industry. So this is basically the discussion I wanted to have regarding the concept of food processing industries. Now we'll go to the next chapter. Before that, if you have any kind of a doubt regarding what we have discussed, please do let me know. Please do let me know. Otherwise, we'll simply go to the next chapter. Any doubts regarding what I've discussed? Any doubts? Large number of micro and small units point. There are large number of micro enterprises as well as small enterprises even in the food processing industry in India. And because these are these are going to invest a very small amount of money, these will have very low productivity. They will have very low productivity. That is a problem. We need to expand the production. We need to ensure that they will adopt a new type of technology so that productivity will increase. Okay. What is minimum export price? I'll repeat it. Minimum export price. Minimum export price simply means the price below which you cannot export product to the international market. Is it okay? I'll repeat it. The price below which you cannot export the product to the market, international market. That is basically minimum export price. Ideal capacity means, and again listen carefully, ideal capacity, right? Just a second. Did I say ideal or idle? Idle. Idle capacity. Idle capacity simply means you have invested and you have created lot of capacity. Imagine you have purchased 5 machines, and right, you expect raw material to be there for using all the 5 machines. But what if because of volatility in the production, raw material availability goes down, and now you will have raw materials using which only 3 machines can be operated. 2 of the machines are simply sitting idle. That is called as idle capacity. Okay. Okay, done. Let me go to the next chapter. Industries and services. Important chapter. Listen carefully. This is the list of the topics I'll be covering. Subtopics. One is industrial policy as well as LPG reforms. All of you heard of LPG? Not the cylinder. I'll not discuss LPG cylinders here. I'll be discussing liberalization, privatization, and globalization. LPG. Okay. LPG cylinders. I'm sorry, LPG reforms. Next one is a disinvestment policy. MSMEs. We'll discuss IIP as well as ICI, Index of Industrial Production, and Index of 8 core industries. Next, we'll discuss services, and finally, certain very important reforms. For example, Make in India. All of you heard of this? Make in India, Startup India, what is the importance, etc. We'll discuss this under the chapter. Now, let me start. Industrial Policy of 1948. I'll give you certain factual information. Certain factual information, my recommendation, please remember them. Right? There are multiple industrial policies which have been announced by the government after independence. The first industrial policy was announced in 1948. After that, another industrial policy in 1956. And after that, multiple policies have been announced, but the most important one is LPG, that is 1991 reforms. Let's have a discussion regarding all these industrial policies. Look at what are the points, right, regarding the industries which have been announced by the government. So in industrial policy 1948, right, four very important points. Point number one, Government of India announced that India will follow a mixed economy model. I repeat, Government of India will follow a mixed economy model. Now, please go back to the first class of Indian economy in the evening batch. All of you remember mixed economy model? We discussed the 3 types of model. One was capitalism, second one was socialism, third one was mixed economy. What do you mean by mixed economy? The factors of production will be controlled, right? Will be controlled by both the private sector as well as the government. Very simple argument. The factors of production or the production, supply, etc. will be done by both the private sector as well as the government. That model is referred as a mixed economy model. So that is the first point. India announced that, our government announced that India will follow a mixed economy model. Now, in order to promote a mixed economy model, I'm going to the second point now. In order to promote a mixed economy model, what was done? Government of India divided all the industries into 4 categories. I'll repeat the statement. Government of India, in order to promote industrialization, that is basically model of mixed economy, promoted or divided the industries into 4 categories. What are the 4 categories? First category, we identified certain industries which will be controlled only by the government, where there is right, the presence of only Government of India. For example, right, please tell me, atomic energy. Even today, can I say atomic energy, there is presence of only Government of India? All of you will agree with me? Atomic energy, right? For example, who will set up companies in atomic energy? Government of India. Who will mine out, right, minerals of related to atomic energy? Government of India. So 1948, we identified certain industries where only Government of India will have presence. Private sector will not be allowed. Right? Examples for them are basically atomic energy, railways, arms and ammunitions. So government said only I will be present in these sectors, private sector will not be present. What about the second category? Already the private sector is present, already private sector companies are there. Government said we will not we will not nationalize all of them today. We'll simply keep a control. We'll simply, right, look at these industries after 10 years. After 10 years, if there is a requirement of nationalization, we can do that. That was the second category, which was referred to as a mixed sector, where you will see both private sector And if there is any requirement, government would set up new units, new industries, and new units under the second category. Private sector is present, but government, if required, will open a new unit, new manufacturing unit within this second category. Right? That was called as a mixed sector. New units would be developed only by the government. Third category, Government of India identified certain industries and stated that I will not be present in this category. Only private sector will be present. Only private sector will be present. Right? So that was called as a third category. And finally, the fourth category, any industry which was not covered under the first, second, and third was kept under the fourth category automatically. I'll give you example, have patience. Right, the fourth category, whatever was not covered under the first, second, and third by default was kept under the fourth category. Best example, can I say agriculture sector? Agriculture sector, right? What about cooperative sector? So agriculture sector, cooperatives, etc. were kept under the fourth category. Right? So is it okay? Third category, only private sector, government generally is not present here. And fourth category, again private sector, right? That is whichever has not come under the first, second, and third category will be classified under the fourth category. So this is how Government of India divided the various industries into four categories under the industrial policy of 1948. Anybody has a problem related to this? Can we go forward? Anybody has a problem? After this, in 1951, government announced Industries Development and Regulation Act of 1951. IDRA, Industries Development and Regulation Act of 1951. Now, what were the provisions of IDRA? Let's go point by point. Point number one. If you gave a wrong information to the government, private sector. Again, I'm talking about private sector. If you provide wrong information to the government and get a license, and Government of India later realizes that you have given a wrong information to get a license, they can cancel your license. Right? They can simply cancel your license. That is the point number one. Point number two, Government of India identified multiple industries and told the private sector which are operating in the industries, you will have to be registered with the government. Very simple. They identified various industries and told the private sector which are operating in the industries, you will have to be registered with me. Get the registration done. Now, once you get registered, imagine you want to invest and expand your capacity. You want to purchase one more company, etc. For many of these decisions, now you will have to take approval of the government first. You will have to take the preliminary approval of the government. Only then you can take decisions such as increasing investment, right? Acquiring new companies, etc. etc. Next important point. Government of India will announce a policy and they will ask you to follow it. Your private sector, government will announce a policy and ask you to follow that policy. If you simply disagree with the government, if you oppose the policy of the government will simply take over the management of the company, will take over the operations of the company. They'll simply take over the operations of the company. Okay, so any reform that is promoted, recommended by the government, you do not have any option. You will have to follow those policies. If you oppose those policies, government will simply take over the management or the operations of the company. Next, if the government of India finds that, the company is not working well, the management of the company is not operating the company correctly, even in such situation, government can conduct inquiry, government can conduct investigations against the management of the company. Right, and finally, government under the IDRA 1951 was given the power, it had the power to regulate regarding production done by the companies, regarding supply done by the private sector companies, regarding distribution, that is a pricing operation that was done by the companies. So government of India was given huge amount of powers under the Industries Development and Regulation Act of 1951. Can we go forward now? Anybody has a problem with this? Right? Remember it like a story. I hope you understand. Try to remember this like a story. It is easier. It is easier. Do not try to by heart everything. If you try to by heart everything, it becomes very, very difficult. Try to remember it like a story. Right? Get registered. Government has identified you. Register. Now you want to invest. Take permission of the government. Government feels you are not conducting management correctly. They will hold right you accountable by conducting inquiry against you. Government will ask you to implement a reform. You will oppose it. Government will take over the management of the company. Government can even intervene, can basically interfere in pricing policies of the private sector. It can interfere in public the distribution done by you. It can interfere in production done by you, etc. So all these were the powers which are given to Government of India under Industries Development Regulation Act of 1951. Come to the third important policy, 48, 51 and 56. And this is very important. 1956 policy is very, very important. Why? Come to the crux of it. Please look at Schedule A industries. Please look at Schedule A industries. Industrial policy of 1956 divided the industries into three groups. Right? They have divided all the industries into three groups. Unlike earlier, where the industries were divided into four categories in 1948, now into three groups. What have they done? Most of the industries, I repeat, most of the industries, wherein Government of India wanted to promote, Government of India wanted to interfere, Government of India felt that these are very important for us. Most of these industries now were brought under control of Government of India. Private sector was not allowed. Only Government of India was allowed in these industries. So please tell me, can you see a shift in the government policies from 1948 to 56? Think of it. From 1948 to 56, can you see a shift in the government industrial policy? That is, what shift you must observe? In 1948, government said private sector can operate in multiple industries. They can operate in multiple industries. We will see after 10 years, right? Very few industries will be under the complete control of the Government of India. But in 1956, government said, no, most of these industries, I feel only government should operate them. Hence, I will bring all these industries under the control of the government, which meant private sector will not be allowed. If private sector is there, these would be nationalized, means ownership would be taken away by Government of India. Ownership would simply be taken away by Government of India. So that is Schedule A. Schedule A industries. Most of the important industries were brought under Schedule A. Apart from this, we also had Schedule B. It included around 12 industries where government said, if private sector is already present, let them be present. But if a new unit has to be set up, it will be set up only by the government. If a new unit has to be set up, it has to be set up only by the government. But in these 12 industries, if private sector is already present, let them continue to operate. Let them continue to operate. I will not nationalize them. And finally, Schedule C. Finally, Schedule C. Any industry which did not fall under A and B was kept under Schedule C. Again, before you start asking, can I give you a best example? Agriculture sector. Look at it and do let me know. And do not try to buy at 12, right? A 12 in the Schedule B, 17 in Schedule C, all the list, etc. It's a very long list. You don't waste your time. UPSC will not ask you those kind of questions. So Schedule C, all the industries which did not fall under the A and B was kept under Schedule C. Best example is agriculture, cooperative, etc. Those were kept under Schedule C industries. Right, so this is one more very important policy of Government of India which was announced. In fact, one of the most important ones. Right, as far as I'm concerned, 48 is important for you, 56 is important, 91 is also very important. 91 is also very important. Right, so 48 we have done, 56 we have done. 51 Act we have done. Now let me take up 1991 LPG reforms. Right? But are these the only policies? Of course no. Multiple policies have been announced by the government. You don't have to understand all those policies for general studies paper. These are more than sufficient. Now, why did Government of India announce a policy back in 1991? What was the reason? Why did Government of India go for announcement of the policy? These are the reasons. Point number one, on one side, most of the industries were under the tight control of the government, which means Government of India had set up public sector enterprises. Public sector companies were set up. Many of these public sector companies had started incurring huge amount of losses. That started incurring huge amount of losses. Now, please tell me, if these public sector companies will start incurring huge amount of a loss, don't you think that's a burden for Government of India? Yes or no? Don't you think that's a burden for Government of India? Many of you ask me, how is that possible? If they are not earning profits and they are incurring losses, how they are burden? Reason is simple. Take example of RBI on one side, although it is not strictly a company. Take an example, RBI and earlier Air India. RBI on one side earns profits, gives the government dividends. Correct? Right? RBI earns profits, gives the government dividends. On the other side, Air India. Air India, earlier Air India, not today's Air India. Air India earlier incurred huge amount of losses. Government of India used to provide money to Air India to just ensure that it continues to operate. Right? It provides money because Air India has to continue to operate, owned by Government of India. So just to keep operations of Air India continuing, Government of India will provide huge amount of money. So don't you think that's a taxpayer's money? That is your money. That is my money. Right? So Government of India is using our money to keep a company which is incurring losses just continued operation. It is keeping this company afloat. So there were a lot of these companies, government owned companies, which were incurring losses. It became a burden for the government. And on the other hand, revenue expenditure was very, very high. Revenue deficit was also very high. The budget deficit was also very, very high. Right? In fact, they will use the term fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is also very, very high. So RD is very high. FD is also very high. What about inflation? In many of these months for during this 1991, in many of these months, inflation was in double digits in India. Inflation was in double digits. Right? Are you people reading newspapers? Do you remember the concept of right, inflation whenever it is in double digits, triple digits, etc.? For example, Argentina. Right? Do you know there's a country by the name of Argentina? Argentina is experiencing a triple digit inflation now. Triple digit, more than 100%, triple digit inflation they are experiencing. So suddenly UPSC can ask you these kind of questions. Please be very careful. Please be very careful. Okay. So come back to the discussion here. Inflation rate very high, many of the times in double digits. Fiscal deficit very high. Revenue deficit also very high. Next one, right? Basically, government has set up a lot of companies. They are incurring losses, which is a burden for the government. And the last important problem which India faced was the crisis in the BOP. Crisis in the balance of payment. Now, what is this balance of payment crisis? If you remember, BOP crisis basically means you're about to exhaust all of your forex reserves. You're about to exhaust means finish all your forex reserves. Even then, you will have a BOP deficit. During 1991, please understand, apart from internal factors, there was an external factor also. What is the external factor? There was a war that was happening in the Middle East. There was a war that was happening in the Middle East, right? That is specifically between two countries, Iraq and Kuwait. Right? All of you are okay with this? Iraq and Kuwait, there was a war which was taking place between these two countries. Now, please tell me, in the Middle East, if there is a war, what do you think will happen to crude oil prices? Connect the dots. What do you think will happen to crude oil prices? Crude oil prices will start increasing. And like today, just like today, earlier also, 1991, we were import dependent. More than 80% of the crude oil we used to import it. So if the crude oil prices will start increasing, don't you think the import prices will also start increasing for us? As a result of this, dollars started flowing out. Huge amount of dollars started flowing out of India. And on the other side, large number of Indian citizens who are located in countries such as Kuwait lost their jobs. And when they lost their jobs, automatically the remittances that were flowing to India, the remittances that were coming to India, the remittances also went down. So on one side, dollar inflow is becoming lesser. On the other side, dollar outflow is becoming more. Right? Don't you think that will lead to a BOP crisis situation? That is exactly what happened in 1991. All of you okay with this? That is exactly what happened in 1991. Right? So there was a BOP crisis. FD was very high. Right? Inflation rate was very high. Right? Etc. Looking at all of these situations, Government of India announced three sets of reforms which are very famously referred to as liberalization, privatization, and globalization. LPG, liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Can we go forward? All of you okay with this? Right? Some of you will say, sir, what about interest liability? You remember fiscal policy discussion? Let me see. Do you remember fiscal policy, that is budgeting discussion? Please tell me, as per the current year's budget, how much of the expenditure the government is incurring in the form of interest in terms of percentages only? How much of the expenditure incurred by the government in the current financial year is in the form of interest? Around 20%. Around 20%. Around 20%. No, some of you are saying exactly opposite. No, 20%. 20% of this year's expenditure government is spending for interest payment. Right now, imagine back in 1991, it was somewhere around 37%. Back in 1991, it was somewhere around 37%. So can you imagine to what extent government of India had borrowed, because the deficit was so high? The deficit was so high, they borrowed huge amount of money, hence interest burden will also be very high. And if you're spending more than one third of your expenditure for interest, what about capital expenditure? What about other sources under the revenue expenditure? There will be a lot of constraint regarding that, lot of restriction on these kind of expenditure. That was the situation. Right? This was a situation back in 1991. Okay, this was situation back in 1991. To overcome this, to overcome this, Government of India announced three sets of reforms: liberalization, privatization, and globalization, collectively referred to as LPG. I'm using the term LPG reforms. In some of the books, they will call this as industrial policy. Industrial policy of 1991. They'll refer to this as industrial policy of 1991. In some of the books, they will call this as new economic policy of 1991. New economic policy of 1991. All are one and the same. Please do not get confused. Right? Do not get confused. Now let me go point by point here. What is the liberalization? What is privatization? And what is globalization? Point number one, liberalization. Liberalization essentially means, understand the importance, meaning of each one of them. Because I'm pretty sure a lot of the students will get confused between liberalization and privatization. Listen to me carefully. Liberalization simply means Government of India over a period of time has imposed a lot of regulations, restrictions on the economy. Liberalization means government will withdraw. I repeat, liberalization means government will withdraw these restrictions or these regulations. In simple terms, if I want to give one word representation, one word, a definition of liberalization, I'll simply refer to this as deregulation. I will simply refer to this as deregulation. Regulation means what? Restrictions, right? Policies which have been imposed over a period of time. Deregulation means government is withdrawing these policies, government is withdrawing these restrictions, right? Hence, I'll refer to this as a deregulation as well, right? So, liberalization means deregulation. What kind of policies are we talking about? What kind of restrictive measures are we talking about? Let me take a very simple example. Until 1991, until 1991, the government of India kept a lot of these industries under the complete control of itself. Until 1991, government of India kept lot of these industries under its own control. That is, only government of India will operate in these industries through its companies. Can I say, if government will withdraw this policy and will allow private sector also to operate, private sector also to compete with government companies, it is nothing but deregulation. All of you okay with this? It is nothing but deregulation only. I'll give you one more example. Until 1991, government used to have huge amount of control over exchange rate. Government used to have huge amount of control over imports coming into India, exports going outside India. What if I remove all these controls, allow imports to come much more easily, allow exports to flow much more easily, allow exchange rate based on market forces? Can I call this as a deregulation? All of you agree? Can I call this as nothing but a deregulation only? So I hope you understand various regulations which were imposed, various policies which were imposed by the government over a period of time. All these policies were withdrawn by the government. That process is called as liberalization. Okay. Let me give you a similar example. Don't write it in exam. Please do not write it in the exam. And again, I'm not promoting it, by the way. I do not promote this kind of a society, right? Don't say, sir, you are anti-women, etc., etc. Have you heard people say, my parents are very liberal? Yes or no? Have you heard people saying, my spouse is very liberal? What do you mean by that? What do you mean when they will say, my parents are very liberal? Meaning what? They are not imposing any conditions. They're not imposing any restrictions. Right? They are giving me a lot of freedom. Right? So I hope you understand that. Right? So yes, liberalization should be there. Right? So again, right, don't twist my words here and there, right? And don't worry about all of this for UPSC exam GS paper 3. But I'm trying to make you understand the meaning of the term liberalization. Correct? Now let me go back. What kind of liberalization measures have been imposed or implemented by the government over a period of time? Some of them. Earlier, industrialization, lot of these industries were kept under the control of the government. Government withdrew this regulation and allowed private sector also to participate. Right? Allowed private sector also to participate. Can I give you one example? Telecom sector. Tell me. Telecom sector, civil aviation sector, right? Even for that matter, railways now. Even in railways, private sector is allowed. Right? So I hope you understand. In lot of these sectors, earlier private sector was not allowed. Now it is allowed. What about financial sector? What about, right, financial sector? In case of financial sector, banks were not allowed to issue shares to the market. They were not allowed to issue shares to the market and raise capital. I'm talking about public sector banks. Government allowed public sector banks to issue shares in the market, raise capital. Foreign banks were allowed to come into India and start operating. Right? These kind of reforms were announced by the government even in the financial sector. Right? There is one more term, FII. FII means foreign institutional investments. From the foreign country, investors were allowed to come to India, invest in the stock market, invest in the bond market. That is called as FIIs. Okay. Next, in case of taxation, government has government earlier had set up a committee, uh, Raja Chalia committee, and this committee recommended a lot of reforms. And as a result of those recommendations, government implemented lot of relaxations or provided lot of deregulatory measures even in case of taxation. For example, online filing of taxation systems, the number of right, the number of slabs, right, the number of slabs in corporate taxes as well as income taxes were reduced. It was made much more simple to file income taxes to the government of India, etc. Right, so lot of tax reforms were implemented. What is the name of the committee? Raja Chalia Committee. Raja Chalia Committee. Okay, Raja Chalia Committee. Next, foreign exchange reforms. We allowed the exchange rate to be determined by market forces. That is, we shifted to a concept of floating exchange rate mechanism. Do you remember this? Earlier, before that, we had LERMS. From that, we shifted to a concept of floating exchange rate, but to be very precise, managed floating exchange rate. Okay. Apart from this, trade policy was also right relaxed to a very great extent. We removed restrictions regarding imports as well as exports. Earlier, if you wanted to import, lot of restrictions were there. For example, you are supposed to take a license for importing, for exporting. These kind of restrictions have been withdrawn. In fact, please tell me, can you connect this concept regarding very recent policy of government of India, which government actually amended? Let me see. Can you connect this concept of import licensing, right, with the recent policy of government of India, which later government said, no, 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 we are not having any licensing policy. Of course, I'm talking about the policy which was announced by the government, which was supposed to kick in from tomorrow, 1st of November, which was supposed to kick in from 1st of November. That is a licensing requirement for personal computers as well as laptops. So don't you think government of India, right? Of course, at least now, are you able to understand why many experts argued that then is government of India reversing the 1991 reforms then? Yes or no? Is government of India implementing regulations now? Is it a licensing regime all over? Right? Government of India said no. Right? No, this is not a licensing regime. Why? Government clearly stated, I don't want to take a license. If you are importing a laptop, no licensing is required. What I want you to do is, whenever you import, please provide us with information. Please provide with information. Tell us what is the source of your import. Please give me that information. In fact, if you have read the newspapers, they are calling this as import management system. Correct? Import management system. They are managing imports. They are not asking you to take a license. They do not want you to take licenses. It's not a reversal. It is not a rollback of earlier liberalization policy. Government is very clear regarding that. Right, done. Right, so trade policy reforms which made it easier to import, export, etc., were also implemented during the liberalization reforms. Okay, next, privatization reforms. And please listen very carefully. What do you mean by privatization? Liberalization means regulations which were imposed are withdrawn. Is it okay? Regulations which were earlier imposed by the government are being withdrawn, are being removed by the government. Whereas privatization simply means government will sell ownership of its company to private sector. I'll repeat it. Whereas privatization means government will sell ownership to private sector. How much ownership? Don't worry. But government will sell its ownership to private sector and withdraw itself from right operations of the company. That concept is called as privatization. If I want to give you one example in the current affairs, all of you know Air India has been privatized. Yes or no? Air India has been privatized now. Earlier, government of India owned 100% of Air India, but today 100% of Air India has been owned by Tata company. Right? So privatization essentially means government will withdraw itself from operations of a company. They will sell the ownership to somebody else, let's say to a private sector, and withdraw itself from the operations. That process is called as a privatization. That is called as privatization. Done. Now, whenever you talk about privatization, right, what is the definition? I've given the definition here. Ownership of the entities under the government would be reduced and more would come under the private sector ownership. Sir, any other example apart from Air India? Do you have, have you heard of the company Maruti? Maruti company. Maruti company earlier was owned by the government. I repeat, Maruti company earlier was owned by the government. Today, Maruti company is not government owned company. Government has no ownership in Maruti. Maruti is a private sector company. Right? So I hope you understand. And if I take an example in the current affairs, Government of India is trying to sell IDBI Bank. Yes? Yes or no? Have you heard of this? IDBI, Industrial Development Bank of India, IDBI. Right? So IDBI Bank, Government of India is trying to sell IDBI Bank to a private sector. If that is done, if that happens, can I simply say IDBI has been privatized now, assuming all the IDBI ownership is sold to private sector. So I hope you understand the argument here, right? So government has ownership in multiple companies. They will sell the ownership and right completely withdraw itself from operations of this company. That is called as privatization. Now, as a result of privatization, what will happen? First one, the public sector. Public sector means how many companies are owned by the government. The number of public sector companies will come down. There is a contraction in the ownership of public sector companies. Right? The number of companies will come down. Second one, there is a term called as a disinvestment. I'll discuss this. Just give me a minute. I'll discuss disinvestment. Just give me a minute. Third one, it will also promote more and more participation of the private sector. Now, before I discuss the concept of disinvestment, many of you are asking, sir, why is the government of India doing this? What is the logical argument behind it? And I'll just give you certain points. Please remember this. Suddenly, UPSC can ask you this kind of a question. Point number one, government of India, right? From one government to another government, their policies will be different. Their viewpoints, right, will be different. But the current government is of the opinion. Current government is of the opinion that it is not the business of the government to be in business. All of you are okay with the statement? I'll repeat it. The current government is of the opinion that it is not the business of this government to be in business. That is, right, whenever you talk about companies, companies should target profits. Companies should focus on efficient utilization of resources, etc. All of that cannot be done by the government. Correct? All of that cannot be done by the government. Right? Because government, I'll take the current affairs example so that you can understand. Do you think railways is being operated solely to earn profits by the government? Let me know. Do you think, again, not very difficult also, it is very easy to connect the dots if you're reading current affairs. If you have read yesterday's article in Hindu regarding railways and today's article regarding in Hindu for railways, you will realize that government is operating railways, but rather than focusing on the profit, it is also focused on social welfare. Right? It is also focused on social welfare. Please tell me, will any private sector company operate for social welfare? Think of it. Will any private sector company, will they say we are operating for social welfare? Right? Absolutely no. Absolutely no. Their agenda is simply profits. They might simply say, yes, yes, we want to promote this, we want to promote that. But at the end of the day, they want to earn profit. I hope you all of you will agree. In fact, let me prove it. Let me prove it. Very recently, there has been a lot of discussion regarding production, productivity, employment, working hours, etc. Right? Are you reading newspapers? Even in today's Hindu newspaper, it was there. Right? Production, productivity, employment hours, etc. Couple of days ago, I believe 3 days ago or 2 days ago, in Live Mint newspaper, they had shown what has been the pay package for the CEO back in right a decade ago, and what is the pay package of CEOs of biggest companies in India today. Right? Again, very interesting topic, by the way. Right? So, what was the pay package of the CEOs a decade ago, and what is the pay package of those people today? Right? CEO, and what is right the average package given to an entry level software engineer? If time permits, look at that data. Do not by heart. Please do not by heart. UPC is not going to ask you that data. You will be surprised to see that there is hardly any change. Sorry. You'll be surprised to see that there is hardly any change, if at all, very small change for an entry level software engineer. Whereas the pay package for the CEOs has been increased by a huge percentage, right? Which means, I hope you understand, at the end of the day, they are not working for social welfare. Do not be under that impression. If they were working for social welfare, don't you think one of the things they would consider is pay parity? Yes or no? One of the things they would be worried about is the pay parity. Pay parity means how much am I earning, how much an entry level worker is earning, how much of the profit am I taking, how much are we giving to entry level workers. They would be worried about all of it. But please understand, again, I'm not criticizing anybody particularly. It's not about anybody particularly. It is generally how capitalism works. It is how concept of capitalism has been built in. Right? The rich will continue to become very rich. Very small amount of revenue will go to other people. That is how capitalism actually works. So come back to the discussion here. I was trying to tell you, why is the government of India privatizing now? The reason is very simple. Government says it is not my business to be in business. It is the business of the private sector. First one. Second one, take example of Air India. Take example of Air India. Can I say taxpayers' money is being used for running a company which is incurring huge amount of losses. I'll repeat the statement. We have discussed it. We are putting in a form of a statement now. If you take example of Air India, earlier, taxpayers' money is being used for running a company which is incurring losses. Has it converted? Has it earned profits? No, it has continuously incurred losses. So why are you using taxpayers' money to run a business which is incurring losses? Is it not inefficient utilization of very precious resources? Right? Is it not inefficient utilization of very precious resources? Of course, yes. Of course, yes. Third point. Third point in favor of privatization. Government says, right, we have lot of companies. We cannot manage all the companies. We have companies in steel sector. We have companies in civil aviation. We have companies here. We have companies there, etc., etc. We cannot manage all these companies. It's very difficult for me. So why not? Why not simply take away some of these companies and sell it? Sell it in the market. That is the third argument. Fourth, very important argument, economics wise, does it not make sense when government will sell money, it will raise money? I'm sorry, it will sell company to raise money. Correct? Government will sell the company to raise money. Don't you want government to collect more and more money so that they will spend here, there, XYZ, etc.? Of course, yes. Right? Of course, yes, you want the government to collect as much as possible revenue, income, so that they'll spend money rather than borrowing huge amount of money. So these are some of the reasons why government says they are opting for privatization. This is right. These are the some of the reasons why government is opting for privatization. But having said so, what are the concerns? What are the concerns regarding this argument of privatization? First one is the government has not created these assets. These assets were created by another government. I'll repeat the statement. This government has not created these assets. Some other government decades ago has created these assets. And this government will simply come to power, sell away all of it. Sell away all of these. Now, what is a guarantee that government will sell it at highest level itself? Highest level in the sense, What is a guarantee that there is no corruption in the system? All of you will agree? Again, please do not make it a political argument. Keep it economical. Keep it related to economics. Right? What if it is sold to, right, a particular party which is which is basically, right, related to a minister, which is related to, right, let's say a particular high working bureaucrat, right? There's always a possibility there can be corruption in the system. That is one concern. Second concern, much more, right, philosophical in nature. Have you heard of selling family silver? Right? What does it mean? Very, very old movies. In very old movies, whenever the family is facing crisis, what will the hero do? What will the mother or the parents of hero do? They will take, right, they will take the family jewelry, right, go to a money lender, right, go to a rich person, sell these particular jewels of the family and take money. Correct? Right? Imagine very, very old movies, Mother India type movies. You'll understand. Now, the argument is these companies are family jewels. These right companies are simply family jewels. And you are selling the family jewels, which means the financial position of the government is very, very weak. Correct? The financial position of the government is very, very weak, which means government is not able to generate sufficient revenues to take care of its own expenditure. Right? They are falling so short that they are involved in, or they are, right, basically resorting to selling of family jewels. Is it not an alarm bell? Right? So I hope you understand. Is it not an alarm bell? Of course, yes. And if you sell these companies, what about workers' welfare? What about welfare of the workers? What about social welfare? And because please understand, imagine a situation, electricity distribution completely privatized. Imagine electricity distribution completely privatized, railways completely privatized. Do you think very, very poor people will be able to afford these kind of services? Think of it. Do you think very poor people will be able to afford these kind of services if it is privatized? Absolutely no. Absolutely no. Why? Railway services, traveling, highly subsidized. Water supply, highly subsidized. Electricity, highly subsidized by the government. Right? So there is also concern that till what extent can you go for privatization? Can you privatize all the goods and services which are being supplied to a common man? Of course, no. You cannot do that. There has to be a line. There has to be a line where you will have to say, right, you will have to stop at this particular line. So these are some of the arguments in favor of privatization, some of the arguments opposing the idea of a privatization. You be aware of both of these things so that whatever questions UPSC will ask you, you will have sufficient data. Okay. Now, what is this concept of disinvestment? I'll go to disinvestment, but before that, please look at this table. My recommendation is simply by heart. Look at this table, simply by heart it. What is the meaning? What should you understand in the table? Very simple. Whenever you talk about government organizations, they are divided into three types. Whenever you talk about government organizations, they are divided into three types. One is called as departmental undertaking. Second one is a public corporation. And the third one is government company. I'll repeat it again. One is a departmental undertaking, right? Or they will also say public undertaking. Second one is a public corporation. And third one is a government company. Now, what is the meaning of each one of them? Right? Why do we have three types of organization, etc.? Let me explain it to you. Let me start with a simple example. Right? Take current affairs, railways. Railways. Can I say railways is a part and parcel of government of India? Let me repeat the question again. Can I say railways is a part and parcel, part of government of India? That is government of India within multiple ministries, has one ministry for railways, and this ministry will take care of everything related to railways in India. It could be operations of the railways. Operations of the railways are completely under the control of the government. How much money will be invested? Government does it. Right? Who will take care of the railways? Government will appoint a minister for that. So can I simply say, whenever you talk about public undertakings or departmental undertakings, these are part of the government itself. There is no law, I repeat, there is no law regarding railways in India. Right? Have you come across any act for railways? Let me know. Have you come across any of the acts for railways which says railway is a separate entity, etc., etc.? You will not come across it. You will not come across it. Don't worry. On the other side, let me give you one more example so that you understand the difference here. Have you heard of NABFID? Food Corporation of India. Please remember, Food Corporation of India, there was an act introduced by the government. I repeat, there was an act introduced by the government. Under this act, Government of India set up Food Corporation of India. There was an act introduced by the government, NABFID Act. Under the NABFID Act, NABFID, National Bank for Financing Infrastructure Development, was actually set up by Government of India. Okay. Now, before I go forward, let me ask you a very simple question. Right? What is a simple question? Again, I will not give you the answer. You have to search for this answer. Not today. Right? After the class is over, right? Search for this answer. Which is the first bad bank? Which is the first bad bank in India? Let me know. Which is the first bad bank in India? There is a particular reason why I'm asking this. Right? There is a particular reason why I'm asking for this, because this is a bank, right? A national bank, which is the first bad bank in India. And those who have answered, very good. Couple of students have answered SASF. Very good. I'm happy. There is a bad bank by the name of SASF. This was there in the newspaper, right? Yesterday, I believe. Yesterday, Economic Times. SASF, right? Please, right? That's the reason. Very often I keep on hammering this point. I keep on hammering this point. Read current affairs. SASF. SASF basically stands for Stressed Assets Stabilization Fund. Stressed Asset Stabilization Fund, SASF. Government of India has announced they are winding this down. They are closing this. SASF is the first bad bank in India. Government of India has announced very recently that they are going to wind it up. They are going to close SASF. So suddenly UPC can pick up a question on this. Please be aware of it. Right? We have come across the term bad bank. All of you remember the concept of bad bank or not? That is, I'll tell you the context. In the banking chapter, I was supposed to discuss NARCL, National Asset Reconstruction Company Limited. NARCL is the latest bad bank which has been promoted by Government of India. But this is not the first bad bank in India. SASF, right, is the first bad bank which was set up by the government. It is being closed now. It is being closed. It was there very recent in the newspaper, hardly 2 days ago. Please read. Please read. Okay, come back to this. So what I was telling you about is very simple. On one side, we have government undertakings which are basically part of the government. Right? Within ministry, within the department of the government, these are generally operated. But on the other side, we also have various organizations which are owned by the government. But please understand, these organizations are established with the passage of an act. There is an act. There is an act under which Government of India will set up these organizations. Now there is a third type of organization which is called as a government company. What do you mean by government companies? These are the companies which are established under Companies Act. These are established under the Companies Act of 2013. These are established under the Companies Act of 2013. Is everybody okay with these three organizations? First one, part of the government, no separate act for it. Second one, government will pass an act. Under that, they will set up an organization. And the third one, government will set up these companies under the Companies Act of 2013. And some of you will be worried, what is the difference in that case? Think of it. Between all the three, the departmental undertaking, government companies as well as a public corporation, where do you think government can interfere in the operations, right, directly? I'll repeat the question by the way. Between all the three, where do you think government can interfere in the operations directly? Right? Interference is very, very direct. Can I say departmental undertaking? All of you will agree? Departmental undertaking, not government companies. Think of it. Not the government companies. Why? Government companies are established under the Companies Act of 2013. The Companies Act of 2013 has a lot of provisions. Government cannot interfere directly in the operations of these companies. Market will not accept it. Market, right, will basically behave inadvertently or opposed to these kind of interference policies of the government. Whereas on the other side, tomorrow can Government of India change a ticket pricing of railways? Correct? Tomorrow, can Government of India directly change a ticket price of the railways? Of course, yes, they can change it because it is part of the government only. On the other side, can Government of India decide at what price steel will be sold by Steel Authority of India Limited? Think of it. On the other side, can Government of India decide at what price Steel Authority of India Limited will sell steel in the market? Absolutely no. Government can't do that because the Steel Authority of India Limited comes under the Companies Act now, right? And under the Companies Act, the government has to appoint the heads. That's it. Appoint the chairmans, right? The chairman will take care of operations of the company, right? So that is basically the argument. That is basically the argument why government has three different types of organizations like this. Now, can I go forward and say, if government wants to have very high control, it will keep it under the departmental undertaking. And if government feels this company should be allowed to operate as per the market forces, they will try to keep it under government companies. Does it make sense to you? Government wants an aluminum company owned by it to compete in the market. They will keep it under the government company, right? They will set it up under the Companies Act. If government feels I need to control the operations of the company, I need to interfere in the operations on day-to-day basis, they will keep it under the departmental undertaking. It's as simple as that. So these are some examples, right, basically for all the three types of government organizations: government companies, public corporations, that is government corporations, as well as government undertakings. Okay, right? CIL stands for Coal India Limited. Right? Some of you are asking what is CIL? Coal India Limited. What is SAIL? Steel Authority of India Limited. The Steel Authority of India Limited as well as Coal India Limited are listed in the stock market. Both of them are listed in the stock market now. And FCA is not listed in the stock market. Food Corporation of India is right, an organization under the Act of Government of India. It is not listed. On the other side, CIL, SAIL, right, all these are listed companies. Okay. Now, what is the use of all of this? What is the use of all of this? Let me come to the concept of disinvestment. Right? What do you mean by disinvestment? Under the disinvestment policy, I repeat, under the disinvestment policy, government might sell part of the ownership or majority ownership to a private sector. I'll repeat the statement. Under the disinvestment policy, investment opposite of that is disinvestment. All of you understand? Right? Again, just to make you understand a simple way, investment opposite of that is a disinvestment. Rather than government investing, government is not investing now. Private sector will invest in these companies. That is a concept of disinvestment. So whenever you talk about disinvestment, it can be done through minority selling of ownership or minority stake sale. It can be done through strategic stake sale. It can be done through complete privatization, right? Or else we can go for cross holding. Government can even try exchange traded funds, right? It's not CPS ETF, just ETF, exchange traded funds. Example of ETFs are CPS ETF as well as Bharat 22 ETF. Now, what is this minority stake sale? What is this minority stake sale? All of you heard of many companies where government will own 100% ownership. Can I give you one example? LIC. Until very recently, can I say LIC was owned by Government of India? Yes or no? Until very recently, LIC, Life Insurance Corporation, LIC was owned by Government of India. Last year, Government of India sold a small amount of ownership of LIC to market. Right? They got the LIC listed in the stock market and certain amount of shares were sold in the market. Now, please tell me, imagine the ownership of Government of India in the LIC will fall down from, let's say, 100% to 94%. From 100 to 94. Can I still say government has more than 51% ownership in LIC? Let me know. Even after this, can I say government has 51% ownership in LIC? And why that 51% is important? What is the importance of that 51 number? Whoever has the majority ownership, whoever has the majority ownership can take decisions for the company, right? They have majority ownership, right? They will decide the fate of the company, right? So understand this carefully. Whenever government will sell certain ownership, but still control more than 51% in a company, it is called as minority stake sale. Minority selling of ownership, right? Minority ownership has been sold in the market. Next one is a strategic. Next one is strategic. What is this concept of strategic? Government will sell away ownership to such an extent that the ownership of Government of India will come down and government will lose management control of the company. I'll give you an example. Government will sell the ownership and right, the government will lose management control over the company. Sir, any example of this? Government tried it, it did not work out. I'll tell you one example. Air India. Earlier, earlier, before selling 100% of Air India, what Government of India proposed was, we will sell away 74% ownership. I repeat, government said, for Air India, we will sell away 74% ownership and government will keep 26% ownership. If that had happened, I'll repeat, if that had happened, can I say government will be owning 26%, but government would have lost management control of Air India? Yes or no? If that had happened, right, if that was actually right conducted, government would have lost management control of Air India. But even then, government would have certain ownership in Air India, right? So whenever government of India's ownership will fall down and they will lose management control over the company, this is called as strategic stake sale, strategic sale of the ownership. Right? They tried it in the context of Air India. Market did not respond to it. Right? Private sector companies said, no, we don't want to purchase. You want to sell? Sell 100%. I do not want to purchase only 74%. That is the precise reason this proposal was cancelled, withdrawn by the government, and instead, government proposed 100% sale. 100% sale. Right, where no ownership of the government, complete transfer of ownership. That is complete privatization. Complete privatization. Complete ownership will be transferred. 100% of the ownership will be transferred to the private sector. Best example, Air India, Modern Foods, right, or for that matter, Maruti, right, etc. Multiple companies, Government of India has done the same thing. Complete privatization has been done by the government. Next is cross holding. Slightly technical, please listen carefully first. Next one is cross holding. Now, let me ask you a very simple question. Okay, let me ask you a very simple question. Imagine, again, please understand the logic behind it. Don't write this in the exam. Understand the logic. Okay, imagine you have a company. You own a company. Okay, now what you do is, this company that you own, let's say XYZ, you will sell this company to your, right, let's say sibling. You will sell this particular company to your sibling. Now the XYZ will be owned by whom? Your sibling. And your sibling will give you money. All of you okay with this? Your sibling will give you money. Right? Now please tell me, has the ownership of the company gone beyond your family? Let me know. Has the ownership of the company gone beyond your family? It still remains within your own family. And second question, by selling the company XYZ, did you earn money or not? By selling the company XYZ, did you make earnings? Answer is yes. Now, take the similar logic, apply it in one more example. Here is the government of India. Okay, here is the government of India. It owns a company X. Government of India owns company X. Government of India also owns company Y. Now, what if Government of India will sell the company X to company Y? Think of it. What if the Government of India will sell the company X to company Y? Can I say because company Y is purchasing X, Y will have to pay money to Government of India? Yes or no? Company Y, it has purchased the company X, it has to pay money to Government of India. And point number two, even after selling, can I say the company X is still indirectly, not directly, it is still indirectly under the control of Government of India. All of you okay with this? All of you okay? This is called as a cross-holding structure. This concept is called as cross-holding structure. Very famous, by the way. In private sector also it is used, right? By the government also it is used, right? This is called as a cross-holding structure, right? So in cross-holding, an entity which was owned by the government will be sold to another entity which is also owned by the government. But what is the advantage here? Advantage for the government is the company is not being completely privatized. Can you say this is a textbook definition of privatization? Think of it. Can you say this is the textbook definition of privatization? Do you think company Y is a private sector company? No. Y is not a private sector company. Y is also owned by Government of India itself. I'll give you one example. Many of you are asking any example of this. There are two companies. One is a Power Finance Corporation. Second one is a Rural Electrification Corporation. Power Finance Corporation as well as the Rural Electrification Corporation, both were owned by Government of India. PFC as well as REC, both were owned by Government of India. Government of India took the Rural Electrification Corporation, sold this to Power Finance Corporation, sold REC to PFC. And who owns PFC? PFC is owned by Government of India. This this methodology is called as cross holding. This is called as a concept of cross holding, right? Very, very famous, right? Don't get confused by this. Both are owned by the government. One will be sold to another. Government will receive money. But can you call this as privatization? No, this is not a concept of, right? This is a criticism, by the way, right? This is not a textbook privatization. Privatization essentially means private sector should purchase the company. It is not a private sector company which is purchasing, right, the REC here, right? And by the way, I'll give you an example. The REC is very important for the government. Rural Electrification Corporation is very important for the government. Many of you will keep asking why does government do this, etc., etc. Have you heard of PM Saubhagya Yojana? Let me see. Have you heard of PM Saubhagya Yojana? Pradhana Mantri Sahaj Bijli Har Ghar Yojana. PM Saubhagya basically stands for Pradhana Mantri Sahaj Bijli Har Ghar Yojana. PM Saubhagya. PM Saubhagya Yojana, the nodal agency is REC. The nodal agency for PM Saubhagya is REC. Now tell me, if Government of India wants to implement PM Saubhagya, it will privatize REC. Imagine, it will privatize REC. Is it possible to implement PM Saubhagya then? Don't you think now they will have to find out some other entity to implement PM Saubhagya? Right? So I hope you understand. Lot of advantages are associated with it. In fact, private sector. Why do I do that? Right? Imagine, let's say, right, I am there here, I'm person X, I own one more company Y, I own one more company Z. Why do I go for a cross holding? If I transfer the ownership of Y to Z, now Y will be owned by Z. Now please tell me, am I directly exposed if anything is done by Y? Let me know. Am I directly exposed? Am I directly liable if anything is done by the company Y? No, I am not liable now. Which company is liable? Company Z is liable. So I hope you understand. Exposures can get limited because of it, right? I can limit my exposure by having a cross holding structure. Lot of billionaires do this. Lot of businessmen actually do this, right? They will have a cross holding structure itself. Okay, done. Now this is right basically the discussion regarding the concept of disinvestment. Already we have discussed idea of the ETF, exchange traded funds in the financial market. Right, through ETF also that the disinvestment policy of the government can be promoted. Okay, right. So this is basically the disinvestment process. Now let me have a discussion regarding this. After this we'll take a break. Okay, after this we'll take a break. And whenever the government will conduct a disinvestment, whenever the government will go for disinvestment, government will generate revenue, government will collect money, right? For what purpose can you use the money for? Can the government use money under disinvestment for launching a welfare scheme? Can government use the money under the disinvestment scheme for providing capital to public sector bank? For what purposes government is allowed to use this money? Right, there is a restriction, there is a limitation on this. Please remember this. Whenever the government companies are disinvested, whenever the government will go for disinvestment of a government owned entity, whatever funds are collected, these are collected inside a fund called as National Investment Fund. Please remember the name. All these funds are collected inside a fund called as National Investment Fund, NIF. And what is the importance of NIF? Please remember this. NIF is not a part of Consolidated Fund of India. I'll repeat the statement. NIF is not a part of Consolidated Fund of India, which means if the government of India wants to withdraw money from the NIF, do they require approval of the parliament? Let me know. Right, if NIF is not a part of Consolidated Fund of India, does government require approval of the parliament to withdraw the money from NIF? Absolutely no. It is not required. Right, it is out of the Consolidated Fund. Hence, government of India at any point of time through executive authority, it is just similar to public account only. Through the executive authority, they will withdraw the funds from National Investment Fund. Now, for what purpose? For what purpose can they use this money for? These are the purposes. Example 1, they can use this money to construct a metro train projects. Have you seen metro train projects being promoted by government of India in multiple states? They can do using the funds. Second, they can take this money, infuse means give money to public sector bank. Provide this money, right, in the form of capital Capital means money. Provide this money in the form of capital to public sector banks. They can do that as well, right? They can use this money to provide right investment for capital expenditure in railway projects, right? I'll come to the CPSC. Just give a minute. They can invest this money, right, in the form of capital expenditure in railway projects. They can provide this money for regional rural banks or even for NABARD, and that is basically a regulatory agency, NABARD. They can use this money to purchase shares of other central public sector enterprise. What is this concept? Listen to me very carefully. CPSC, by the name of, it is basically stands for Central Public Sector Enterprise. Central Public Sector Enterprise, CPSCs. Now, what is this rights issue? What is the concept of a rights issue? Let me give a very simple example here. Listen carefully. Rights issues means the shares are issued to existing shareholders. I'll repeat the statement. Right? The shares are issued to the existing shareholders. Do you understand the term rights issues now? For example, let's imagine there's a company X and there are 5 shareholders of the company X. I'm taking a simple example so that you understand it. There are 5 shareholders of the company X. If this company X will issue shares to the same shareholders, if it will issue the shares again to the same shareholders, this is called as rights issues. Any problem here? Can I go forward? Any problem with the term rights issues? Rights issues basically means the shares are issued to the existing shareholders. Whoever is the existing shareholder, to the same shareholder, again shares are issued. That is called as a rights issues. So the National Investment Fund, NIF, can also be used for rights issue purchases done by CPSs. And finally, government can use these funds to invest in nuclear energy companies in India. For example, Uranium Corporation, that's a nuclear energy related company. They can also invest in another nuclear energy related company such as Bharatiya Navikiya Vidyut Nigam Limited. Both are related to atomic energy or nuclear energy. Right, so government can utilize these funds to invest even in the companies associated with nuclear energy. Right, so these are certain very important points regarding the concept of the disinvestment. Right, the last point before I take a break, last point. The government has very recently announced a new disinvestment policy. By heart this. My recommendation, please by heart it. The government of India very recently has announced a new disinvestment policy. In fact, let me ask you one current affairs question. How many of you have come across an article where finance ministers say, going forward in the future, we will have only 4 public sector banks? Let me check. If you have not read it, type it in Google, then you will realize that, okay, finance minister has given a statement. Finance minister has given a statement where it says, in the coming years, we will reduce the number of public sector banks only to 4. Why do you think finance minister is talking like that? Is there any logic behind it? Of course, yes. Government very recently, in the last couple of years, has announced a new disinvestment policy. As per the new disinvestment policy, government says, if I feel, I repeat, if I feel, that is, if the government feels some of the sectors, some of the industries are very important for the government to promote growth, to promote social welfare, for national security, etc., they will keep it under the strategic sectors. I'll repeat the statement. Government of India says, if they feel that the sectors are important for promotion of growth, promotion of social welfare, promotion of national security, etc., they will keep it under strategic sectors. And if the government feels these are not so important for me to keep a very tight control, then no issues, I'll keep it under the non-strategic sectors. Why I'm calling this as a strategic as well as non-strategic? It is based on whether government will have presence in those sectors. I hope you understand. The identification or the division is based on whether government should be present in these sectors. For example, please tell me, right? Should the government be present in banking sector? Let me know. Should the government be present in the banking sector in India? Of course, yes. You'll have to say yes. Don't say, sir, no, not required. Private sector banks are there, etc., etc. No, my dear. If everything is privatized in banking, who will provide loans to agriculture sector? Who will provide loans to education sector? Right? Who will provide loans to marginal farmers? Right? Who will open branches in villages? So I hope you understand. I hope you understand. What about insurance sector? Yes, government should be present in the insurance sector also. Because please understand, yes, it is right. Okay, if you say private sector is present, no doubt, private sector is present. But do you think all the products, financial services provided by the insurance company are affordable for the poor people in India? Think of it. Do you think these kind of right insurance products which are provided by the private sector company are affordable to the poor people? Absolutely no. Right? That is the precise reason government says that there are certain sectors. If I feel that I need them to promote social welfare or to promote overall growth in the economy or for national security, then I'll be present in those sectors. I will call them as strategic sectors. And please remember this, in strategic sectors, for example, banking, government says I will have maximum 4 companies under my ownership. Is it okay? All of you are okay with this? Right? I'll repeat it. If anything falls under the strategic sector, government says maximum I will have 4 companies under my ownership. Sir, what if there are more than 4 companies? For example, today, if you check the list of public sector banks in India, there are more than 4 public sector banks. There are in fact more than 10 public sector banks in India. But what is the government clarifying? What is the government telling you? Government is saying, please don't worry. I know I've announced a disinvestment policy. In the future, I will reduce the number from 12 to 4. Very simple. Right? Government is saying, I'll reduce the number from more than 10 to 4 only. How? I will merge. I will go for mergers. That's it. I'll simply go for mergers. Right? So I will reduce the number of my presence to maximum 4 entities under strategic sectors. What are strategic sectors? Nuclear energy, that is atomic energy, insurance, transportation, right? Telecommunications, right? Banking sector, all these part of strategic sectors. And if right, it is not a part of strategic sector, by default, I will classify this as a non-strategic sector. And the government clearly says in the non-strategic sector, I will not have presence, right? Not even a form of a single company. I will not have any presence whatsoever, right? Do not have presence means what? Government says, if I have companies in the non-strategic sectors, I will simply privatize them. If privatization is not possible, I will close them. Right? For example, many of you ask me, sir, what are the examples of non-strategic sectors? My dear, can I say agriculture sector? Right? What about textile sector? Can you keep on adding multiple sectors? Right? But don't worry, right? 1 or 2 examples are more than sufficient. Right? So now non-strategic as well as strategic. This is the latest disinvestment policy of the government. My recommendation, by heart the list. By heart the list, UPSC can ask you the question. Okay. Now let me take a pause. Let's take a short break. If you have any questions, please do let me know. Otherwise, we'll take a break. Explain public corporation. I'll repeat it again. There are 3 types of organizations. There are 3 types of organizations. One is a government undertaking. When you say government undertaking, it is a part and parcel of the government. Government, right, will manage this as one of the activities of the government only. Government will manage railways just like they are managing any other government activities. Interference of the government is very high. Direct interference or intervention. Whereas on the other side, a Food Corporation of India, there is an act. As per the act, FCI will perform functions. As per the act, right, the head of the FCI has to be appointed. So the interference of the government in operations of FCI will be comparatively lower. And the highest is government companies which are established as per the Companies Act. These are generally the listed companies. Government interference is very, very low in case of government companies. Okay. Sir, FD or FPI in strategic ownership is allowed. We'll talk about FD and FPI later. Please don't worry. In case of right, many of these areas, FD is allowed. In case of many of these areas, FD is allowed. In fact, okay. Can we say public corporations are statutory bodies? Again, the difficulty is, can you say all the statutory bodies are public corporations? Right? Not necessarily, because all the statutory bodies are not involved in economic activities. For example, FCI is involved in economic activity. So yes, right, these are basically statutory organizations which are set up to perform certain economic activities of the government. Do we not done NMP? No, my dear, NMP is yet to be done. I'll discuss this after the break. What is a disinvestment? A disinvestment basically means government of India selling part of the ownership or majority ownership or complete ownership of the company to private sector. How they use money from NIF, my dear, just now we have covered it. Government can use the money for metro projects. Government can use the money for right, railway capital expenditure. They can use money in atomic energy, etc. Right? There are multiple ways through which NIF funds can be utilized. ETF, discussing ETF is not possible for me, right? Because I'll tell you what is ETF, but you'll not understand it. I'll have to spend 20 minutes to explain what is ETF now. ETF is a type of a security or a portfolio which will consist of group of securities. Now, how will you understand what is that? Right. So that's a reason. Please revise. Please revise. In fact, those who are present on that day or check it. Right. Please tell me, did I not convince you how ETF methodology will help government of India in conducting this investment? Let me know. Those who are absent, you can check the video. Right. In fact, I discussed right while discussing ETF itself. I've discussed and told you this is how through ETFs at government's disinvestment policy can be achieved. Okay. Okay. Done. So let me pause the discussion here. Okay. Let me pause the discussion. We'll start the discussion again at 7:18. Right. Let me start the discussion again at 7:18. Please join back. Okay, good evening everyone. Welcome back. Am I audible? Can we start now? Let me know. Can we start? Okay, done. So, what we have done so far, if you have lost sight of what we're discussing, we started with the concept of liberalization, correct? We started with the idea of liberalization, then we entered into a concept of privatization. We have not yet finished privatization. I'll discuss certain current affairs regarding privatization. After that, we'll go with globalization. After that, we'll discuss concept of globalization. Okay. Now, let me start. Current affairs. I'll discuss two important concepts here. One is NIP, National Infrastructure Pipeline. Second one is NMP, National Monetization Pipeline. Let me start with NMP first. Listen carefully. Most of you will feel all these are types of disinvestments, etc., etc. No, listen carefully. One is called as a National Monetization Pipeline. Let me cover this. Then we'll go back to NIP. What is this National Monetization Pipeline? Government of India says we have invested lot of money and we have created lot of assets. For example, right? Let's say railway stations, road network, railway network, right? Or let's say power sector infrastructure, or for that matter, sports infrastructure, etc. So government of India says we have invested lot of money and we have developed a lot of infrastructure. But some of the infrastructure, we are not able to make the best utilization of it. These are not at all utilized or these are underutilized. Okay, these are not at all utilized or these are underutilized. So what can we do? We have spent money, but we are not getting right revenues from them. We are not utilizing them correctly. What should we do? Government says, let's monetize them. And before I go forward, whenever you come across the term monetize, monetize means giving value to an asset. Monetization means giving value. Please understand, right? We are giving value to a particular asset. Hence, this is called as a monetization. Now, what is done under the monetization? Government has identified multiple assets under various sectors. Should you remember all the sectors? No, I'll tell you a trick. Remember the top three. What are the top three? Roadways, railways, and power sector. Roadways, railways, and power sector. If you want to remember, remember all of them. I don't have any problem. But if you say, sir, it is very difficult for me to remember all the sectors, my recommendation is remember the top three: roadways, railways, as well as the power sector. Now, under this, Government of India says, I want to monetize assets. I want to monetize. Monetize simply means what? I want to lease them. I want to give these assets on the lease to a private sector. For example, airport is there. Government will give this airport on lease basis for, let's say, 30 years to private sector company. And the government will collect a certain amount from the private sector. Right? Let's say there is a roadways. Roadways will be given to a private sector for 30 years. Government will collect revenue from the private sector for having collected tolls for 30 years. So argument is simple here. These assets which have been identified will be given on lease basis. Remember, will be given on lease basis. And after 30 years, they will be returned to Government of India. Which means, can I simply say, in case of national monetization pipeline, government is not selling assets. Let me know. Under national monetization pipeline, government is not selling assets. It is simply leasing the asset. It is not selling the asset, which also means ownership will remain with the government, but power of using the infrastructure, how to use the infrastructure, will be given to private sector. That is a basic idea of a national monetization pipeline. All of you okay with this? Now there is one more term here. It will cover brownfield projects. It will cover brownfield projects. Now I'll explain this. Listen to me very carefully. You'll come across two terms. One is called as a greenfield. One is called as a greenfield. Second one is called as a brownfield project. Greenfield project and a brownfield project. What is the basic idea of a greenfield and a brownfield? Whenever any project has to start from scratch. Do you understand the term scratch here? From the beginning. Any project which has to start from the scratch, from the beginning, that project is called as a greenfield project. Whereas a brownfield means the project, that is infrastructure, is already present. Infrastructure is already present. You do not have to construct infrastructure. You will use the infrastructure which is already there. Let me give you example, then you tell me which is greenfield, which is brownfield. Let me start with an example. Example 1, imagine you are the government, airport is already there. You will ask me to operate airport for 30 years and I will give you certain amount of revenue. Example 1, I'll repeat it. Airport is already there. You will ask me to operate the airport but give you certain amount of revenues. Please tell me, is it greenfield or brownfield? Is it greenfield or brownfield? It is a brownfield. It is a brownfield. Very simple, my dear. Brownfield. Right? Because the infrastructure is already there. But on the other side, I'll give you one more example. You will ask me to construct a road and operate the road for 30 years. You will ask me to construct the road, operate the road for 30 years, give you revenues. Greenfield or brownfield? Everybody's okay? Second example is greenfield. So whenever project has to be constructed from the beginning, that is from the scratch, we'll say it is a greenfield. When project is already present, you have to operate an existing infrastructure, that is called as a brownfield project. Now, any problem if I say all the projects which are covered under the national monetization pipeline will be brownfield projects? Let me know. All the projects which are covered under the NMP will be brownfield projects, because government says I've already constructed the infrastructure, I've spent money, infrastructure is there, you have to use the infrastructure, give me money. Right? So these are the numbers which have been given by the government. Some of you are asking, should we remember all these numbers? Don't waste your time. Please do not waste your time. Right? Why do you think remembering all these numbers is easy? Think of it. Do you think remembering all these numbers is easy? Right? No, it is not easy. Don't waste your time. Okay? Do not waste your time. Simple. These are the important areas. That's it. That's it. Right? You don't have to waste your time. Do not try to do a PhD thesis on all of this. Waste of your time. Now let me do a critical evaluation. Critical evaluation. Why is the government doing this? What are the concerns? Why is the government doing? Point number 1. If the assets are not utilized or underutilized by the government, by giving it on lease, can I say at least private sector will utilize the resources much more efficiently? Yes or no? Private sector will utilize the assets much more efficiently. And in the process of utilizing, I am earning money. I am earning money from the private sector. So private sector will use the resources, provide services to me, you, other companies, etc. We are getting benefit. Government will earn a revenue. Government will also get the benefit. Right? That is right, the first as well as second advantage. Third advantage. And the third advantage, if the model will work, if this model will work at the central level, can we use the same model even at the state level so that the revenue position of the state governments will also improve? Let me know. Can we use the same model at the state level so that the revenue position of even the states will be improved over a period of time? Of course, yes. So first one, it will, right? Basically, assets are there. Nobody is using it. Private sector will utilize it. It will unlock the value. It will basically bring in the asset for utility now. Somebody can use the asset. Second, government will get the money, right? It is good for the government. If the asset is utilized, let's say power transmission, railways, roadways, right, etc., or airports, etc., customers will also get the benefit. And finally, we can use the same model at the state level so as to improve the financial position of even the state governments, assuming it will work out at the central level. So these are some of the advantages or benefits which are associated with the model of national monetization pipeline. Having said so, what are the issues or concerns related to this model? Are there any problems related to this kind of a model? Of course, yes. Point number one, if you will give, let's say, an airport to private sector, don't you think they might remove some of the employees who were earlier employed by the government? What about the employment? Think of it. What about the employment? Of course, yes, employment will be affected. Second, second, if private sector will spend money on this infrastructure project, does it not mean private sector will not spend the same amount of money somewhere else? Think of it. If you're still confused, I'll give a very simple example. Imagine you have 500 rupees. Imagine you have 500 rupees. You wanted to purchase, right, let's say a polity book. Instead of purchasing a polity book, you purchased an economy book, which means instead of spending on one book, you have spent on another book. It's not that overall expenditure has increased. Instead of spending on one book, you have spent on another book. Apply the same logic. So if private sector will spend money on, let's say, a railway network, a railway project, it means it will limit its investment in other projects. If the private sector spends under this, capex in other projects will get limited. Right. Second one, I've already discussed. What about safety and security of workers? That is also a concern. Third one, if private sector will start providing the services, don't you think they might increase the cost or the price at which they are offering services to common man? Can this happen? If private sector will take over the project and they will start providing the services instead of the government, private sector works for profit. Very simple. Private sector wants to earn profit. So in the process of earning profits, they might offer the services at a higher cost, which means customers will have to shell out or may have to pay more money for it now. Next one, there is a concern, by the way. Okay, there is a concern as to which assets will be identified by the government, on what parameters the assets will be identified, and how these assets would be given to private sector. What if, that's very important. What if there's a conflict of interest between the private sector as well as the government official? What if there's a corruption in the system? What if we will end up allocating all these resources to only one company? That company will become very, very powerful. Yes or no? Right? So there are certain concerns regarding allocation of the assets itself. Are we getting the right amount of money from the private sector? How transparent is the process of allocation of these assets? How the value of the asset will be evaluated? All these are the concerns. And finally, once the asset is utilized by the private sector, returned back to the government, what will be, right, the status of asset? What will be the shape or form of the asset? Now, to make you understand the shape or form, I'm pretty sure all of you have seen people living in rental homes. Let me know. All of you seen people living in rental homes. In fact, some of you might have given homes on rent. Some of you might be in a rental home. Might be. I'm not saying everybody is like this only. Now, please let me know, once you are vacating your rental house, or you have given a home on rent and the person is vacating the home, have you seen what will be the shape or form of the vacated house? Right? Have you seen that? The taps will not be working. Windows will have cracks throughout the home. Right? A painting would have fallen off. Fan will not be working. In some of the homes, they have taken the fan also. Buttons are not working. Right? Windows are not opening. Apply the same logic to an asset. Apply the same logic to an asset. A private sector will utilize the asset for 30 years and hand it over to the government. So don't you think after 30 years when the asset is handed over, right, the performance of the asset, or let's say the shape or form of the asset, will be very inferior, right? So that is basically the argument. Okay, so these are some of the concerns associated with the concept of national monetization pipeline. Now, why is the government of India conducting NMP? What is the logic behind it? Why is the government of India raising funds under NMP? There is one more project of government of India by the name of NIP, National Infrastructure Pipeline. There is one more project, National Infrastructure Pipeline, NIP. Now, what is this National Infrastructure Pipeline? Government says, I will, along with the state government and the private sector, we will invest and develop lot of infrastructure in India. Is it okay? And the government of India under NIP says, the government of India plus state government plus private sector will invest and develop infrastructure in India. What kind of infrastructure are we talking about? Government under NIP has identified more than 9,000 projects. I'll repeat it. Government of India under NIP has identified more than 9,000 projects, 9K infrastructure projects. Sir, in which sector they have identified infrastructure project? Again, the same argument. Roadways, railways, and power. That's the reason I said try to remember these three. They will come under the NMP as well as NIP. They'll come under both of them, NMP as well as NIP. Railways, roadways, and power. These are the three most important sectors. Apart from this, there are many others. You can have a look at it. There are many others, but these three are the highest allocated sectors under the National Infrastructure Pipeline. And out of 9,000 infrastructure projects, for all these 9,000 infrastructure projects, Government of India says they'll be spending anywhere around 111 lakh crore rupees. Look at the mind-boggling number. Government will be spending anywhere around 111 lakh crore rupees. But the fact is very simple here. Government cannot spend all the 111 lakh crore. It says 111 lakh crore will be divided between the center, states, as well as the private sector. How much of this will be done by the state government? 40%. How much by the private sector? 21%. And remaining 39% will be spent by central government. Right? So these are certain important points regarding NIP. Now, what are the advantages? What are the benefits we are expecting regarding NIP? First one, can I say NIP, promotion of NIP will lead to development of high quality infrastructure in India. They will use the term world class infrastructure. Right? Promotion of NIP means we'll be able to develop world class infrastructure in India. If any of you are confused, I'll give you a current affairs example, then automatically you'll only tell me. All of you heard of Delhi Mumbai Expressway? Let me see. All of you heard of Delhi Mumbai Expressway? That is one project associated with NIP only. One project associated with NIP only. Now please tell me, is it not a world class infrastructure that we have developed? Yes. As a result of this world class infrastructure, will the time taken for transportation come down? Yes. Will the cost of transportation come down? Yes. It will benefit various industries. Answer is again yes. Will it benefit customers such as you and me? Passengers such as you and me? Of course, yes. Right. So these are all the benefits. These are all the benefits that are generally associated with the concept of national infrastructure pipeline. Develop world-class infrastructure. Capital expenditure will always be associated with multiplier effect. Right? Contribution to employment, contribution to GDP, increased investment, etc. Multiplier effect is there. It will attract lot of private sector investment, and it will also improve the quality of life for all the citizens such as you and me. Done? Right? So these are certain very, very important points regarding national infrastructure pipeline. It is supposed to be implemented from 2020 to 2025. From 2020 to 2025. Okay, so this is the concept of NIP and NMP. Can we go forward now? Can we go forward? Why do we use the term pipeline? My dear, pipeline simply means, right, there is a process. Right? For example, have you heard of this particular statement? Again, that is where I expect you to listen to the news, right? Read newspapers, etc. They will say, this actor has two projects in the pipeline. Yes or no? Right? This particular actor, they'll say, has three projects in the pipeline. Pipeline means they are under the process. They are going to come one after the other. That is the reason they use the term concept of pipeline. Okay, then many of you people keep on saying that, right? Sir, I've never heard of this. I've never heard of it. Just out of curiosity, what do you people do in your spare time? And what do people do in your spare time? Please don't tell me you don't have spare time also. Don't tell me that, sir, 18 into 7 into, right, 365 we read. Don't say that. I will not accept it. Right? And remaining 6 into 7 into 365 we sleep. Right? Is there anyone who does, right, the process so mechanically? Right? 18 hours study, and the moment 18 hours is over, you'll sleep like this. No, I'm pretty sure all of you have lot of, or let's say at least some spare time. Right? What do you people do in that particular spare time? I'm actually right, intrigued by it, because the examples that I try to give you are not from Mars, not from let's say the moon. Chandrayaan has not given me those examples. All of these are basically there in the day-to-day newspapers and news, etc. Okay. Anyways, done. Right? If you're reading, good. If you're not reading, right, work on it. Please work on it. Okay. Let me go to the next one. So liberalization is over, privatization is over. Now please tell me, can you say national monetization pipeline is privatization? Let me know. Can you people say national monetization pipeline is privatization? Is government of India selling the asset? No, government of India is basically leasing out the asset. Leasing out the asset. So instead of privatization also, now there is one more method used by the government to generate revenues, but without losing the ownership of the asset. Without losing the ownership of the asset. That is interesting about NMP. Okay. Now let me go to the last pillar under the LPG reforms, the third pillar, concept of globalization and the idea of globalization. Now, what do you mean by globalization? Globalization is defined as an increase in the flow of goods, services, capital, people, and ideas across international boundaries. I'll repeat the statement. Globalization is defined as increase in the flow of goods, services, capital, and ideas across international boundaries. For example, you tell me, post 1991, can I say the trade between India and the rest of the world has increased? Simple yes or no? Post 1991, trade between India and rest of the world, has it increased? Yes. Exports have increased, imports also have increased. What about investments? What about investments? And interesting enough, some of you are saying no. No to the first question. Why, my dear? Do you remember liberalization? Right? Did we not come across the term liberalization, wherein I said government has removed restrictions regarding imports as well as exports? As a result of this, automatically you should say yes, because of that, trade has increased. What about investments? Investments to India have increased? Answer is yes, by the way. Don't say no, sir, I've not come across it. So answer is no. My dear, investments into India have increased. FDI is flowing, a huge amount of FDI is flowing into India. FII, huge amount is flowing into India. So what about, right, inflow of goods and services? Yes. Inflow of labor, outflow of labor? Yes. Trade relations? Yes. Can I say this is nothing but concept of globalization? In globalization, Indian market will start getting integrated with the global market. Very simple idea. Indian market will get integrated. Integrated means more and more inflow and outflow will happen between India and rest of the world. That is basically the concept of globalization. How has the government of India promoted globalization in India? For example, government has promoted lot of inflow of FDI as well as FII. Government has removed restrictions regarding imports as well as exports. Government of India, in fact, has allowed the market forces to determine exchange rate, which will facilitate currency inflow and currency outflow. Through all of these measures, government is promoting the concept of globalization itself. Then all of you okay with this? All of you okay? Now, what is the advantage of globalization? What is the meaning of free flow? Free flow, my dear. Please tell me, is government of India restricting inflow of imports now compared to 1991? Think logically. We have discussed all of it. You should not be asking all of these now. Before 1991, did you not come across various restrictions imposed by the government whenever inflow has to come? Import licensing requirement was there. Today, is there an import licensing requirement? For most of the goods and services, there is no licensing requirement. For most of them, there is no licensing requirement. Very few of them, which are very sensitive, government might say, you will have a licensing requirement. Right? But rest of them, free flow of imports, free flow of exports without any restrictions. Now, what is the evaluation of globalization? What is the evaluation? First one, first one, it will lead to lot of employment generation in India. Now, to make you understand, I'll use technical terms here. Investment will come from, let's say, USA to India. Investment will come from USA to India. Now, please look at the technical terms here. I will call USA as a home country, sorry, source country. I will call USA as a source country, and I'll call India as a home country. All of you okay with these terms? Source means from where the money is coming. Home means where the investment is actually landing. Now, let me start. Can I say, based on this example, globalization will lead to a lot of employment generation in the home country? Yes or no? Right? Arey Baba, my mistake, my mistake. My mistake. I've written ulta. This is called as home. My mistake. USA is home country. USA is a home country, right? And India is called as host. My mistake, right? So again, I'll repeat it. Source country or home country? Source or home? USA is a source or home country. India is a host country. I'll repeat the statement now. Can I say now, the globalization will promote creation of employment in host country? Let me know. This should be very clear to you now. If anybody has a doubt, let me know. Host means where the investment is coming. Home means from where the investment is arising. So can I say it will create employment in the host country, that is India. It will increase production in India. It will contribute more to GDP in India. It has a multiplier effect in India. Have a look at this. And if production in India is increasing, is there a possibility that rather than importing, we'll start promoting more and more exporting to the rest of the world? If you want a better clarification, what about Apple company? What about Apple company? Right? So Apple has invested huge amount of money in India. USA is a home country. India is a host country. So are they creating employment here? Yes. Are they contributing to GDP here? Production here? Manufacturing here? Yes. As a result of this, are we not supplying more and more, exporting more and more mobile phones to the international market? Again, answer is yes. Right? So these are some of the benefits. These are some of the benefits. Employment will increase, per capita incomes might start increasing, people will earn more salary, their quality of life, standard of living will increase, they will get access to better technology, right? We can start exporting more and more, etc. Having said so, what are the issues or concerns? What are the issues or concerns regarding the globalization? First one, can I say, if Apple will invest money in India, it simply means it is not going to invest that amount of money in USA. Correct? Right? Yes or no? Think of it. If Apple will invest, let's say, 10,000 crore rupees in India and create jobs, create manufacture in India, instead of investing in China, instead of investing in USA, they are investing in India. So can I say, because of globalization, right, there will be loss of jobs in the home country. If you're still confused, what call centers? BPO, call centers. An American company, instead of opening a call center in USA, will open a call center in India, which means loss of jobs in USA, creation of jobs in India. Right? So host country, creation, home country, loss of jobs. Right? That is the first concern. Second concern, even if they are investing in India, right, don't you think it will further lead to income inequality, wealth inequality, capitalism, basic idea for capitalism. So when capitalism will be, right, exhibited in the form of globalization, right, income inequality will further increase. What about tax avoidance, tax evasion done by the companies? These companies can avoid lot of taxes to government of India. They can evade a lot of taxes which are due to government of India. So that is also a concern for us. Tax avoidance, tax evasion. And apart from this, what about impact on environment? Environmental impact, right? Are they not polluting more? Are they not creating lot of pollution? Are they not leading to India becoming one of the largest polluters in the global market? Of course, answer is yes. In addition to this, there will be a lot of exploitation of workers in India. Lot of exploitation of workers. Let me prove it. What these companies generally do is, rather than hiring the workers directly, they will outsource the work. Have you heard of the term outsourcing? I'll repeat it. Rather than these companies directly hiring the workers, they will outsource the work. Outsource means they will ask somebody else to create this work and give it to them, and that person will hire people. And what is the problem with that? Problem with that is, the company is not directly hiring you, hence the company will not pay you the right amount of salaries. They will basically pay the amount of money, certain amount of money, to certain project manager or a company owner in India. Company owner will pay a small amount of money to other, right, let's say, workers. For example, let me prove it. Lot of you, or let's say not particularly you, your friends, they would keep on saying, my client is a USA company, my client is right, an Australian company, our company is providing services to, right, a British company, etc. What is that? It is a concept of outsourcing. They will not hire you directly, they will get the work done through somebody else, which means you are not the employees of the company. They will not pay you appropriate salary. They will give the owner of one more Indian company certain amount of money. They will distribute a small amount of money in the form of wages or salaries amongst others. In fact, if I want to give you one more example, which has created a lot of awareness in the global market, all of you know Bangladesh is one of the major exporter of textile products to the international market. Let me know. All of you have come across, or at least have heard, along with India, even Bangladesh is one of the competitors, exports a lot of textile products. But if you read about what is actually happening in Bangladesh, you will come to know that, in fact, multiple accidents have happened a couple of years ago. People are employed, child labor is employed. People are employed at very, very low amount of wages, very, very low amount of wages. Children are employed to work in these particular companies where proper fan is not installed, proper drinking water facility is not provided, proper food facility is not provided. These are called as sweatshops. Check it later. Again, economics, they will not ask you this, but you'll come across a term called as sweatshops. Bangladesh is known for this. Right? They are referred to as sweatshops. Why sweatshops? Right? No facilities. Absolutely no facilities. Right? Children who are not allowed to work are engaged in activities. People are engaged in activities, they are given throwaway salaries, very, very meager salaries. Some of you might be asking, sir, why are they working then? My dear, you tell me what is the other option available to them. Right? If in a country a large amount of population is poor population, what is the other alternative economic activity that is available as an opportunity for them? There is no opportunity. Whatever is available, they will take up that work itself, even though that pays very less, right? And no facilities are provided, etc. Done? Okay, sir, that is a discussion regarding the concept of globalization. So liberalization is over, privatization is done, and globalization is also done. Can we go forward now? Let me know. Can we go forward? Then what is government doing? My dear, I'm not saying government is blind to it. I'm not saying government is not doing anything. You tell me. Again, don't write all of this in the exam. Even today, have you not come across instances of where child labor is used in India? You tell me. If you say no, then I'll simply say you do not know what is happening in reality in India. Have you not come across instances of forced labor in India? Have you not come across the term of bonded labor in India? Bonded labor. Yes, there are instances. There are instances. And it doesn't mean that you'll come to a conclusion government is not doing anything. You cannot say that. Government does. Lot of measures are undertaken by the government. Yes. But even then, you tell me if the situation is like that. If people are finding it very difficult to get a stable job, what is the other alternative available to them? In fact, I don't know how many of you have read a couple of days ago, I believe yesterday or day for yesterday, in Mint newspaper, there was one alarming news, concerning news. For the first time in the software sector, the labor has shrunk. Have you come across that article? For the first time in software sector in India, the labor number is shrinking. That's a concerning factor, my dear. Read it. Why? You might ask me, sir, why? Why should we be worried about it? Software sector has attracted the highest amount of FDI post 2000 in India. At post 2000, huge amount of investment FDI has entered into IT and ITES. In fact, as per government data, somewhere around 15%, 1/6 of the total investment that has come into India has gone into IT and ITES. And now, because of various external factors as well as internal factors, the software companies, they are saying our demands, our demand book, basically how much demands we are getting for products. The demand book is right slightly shrinking. And because the demand book is going down, I don't have any other option but basically not to hire people. Correct? Does it make sense or not? And because software is such a sector where labor is huge amount of labor is used, is it not a concerning factor for us? Right? So again, I hope you understand. Recently, there was a problem with diamond sector. Did you people read about it? I'd asked you to read about it. Diamond sector. Diamond sector is also very labor intensive. Very, very much labor intensive. Diamond sector is also very labor intensive. What about textile sector? Last week there was one article, I am unable to recollect the name of the newspaper. Textile sector exports have come down. Couple of years ago, I believe around 6 to 7 years ago, a similar question was asked by UPSC. What was the question? I'll just paraphrase it. In recent times, labor intensive exports have been affected. Discuss the factors behind it. Let me know. Right, in recent times, again, I'm not saying UPSC will not ask you that question. Looking at software, looking at diamond sector, looking at textile exports, can a question on the similar lines be framed? In recent times, the labor intensive export sector is slowing down. Discuss the factors behind it. Many of you will keep on wondering what are they asking. Right? Faculty did not discuss it. I've never come across this anywhere. Right? Are these sectors such as textile sector as well as the diamond sectors, are these not labor intensive? Labor intensive in a nutshell means where lot of labor is required. Lot of labor is required. You are going to spend money. Lot of labor is required. I'll give a simple example. Please tell me, in diamond sector, will you require lot of labor or not? In textile sector, will you require a lot of labor? Of course, yes. On the contrary, let me go to exactly opposite side. Opposite side. What about thermal power sector? Thermal energy. Thermal energy means you must have seen lot of large cylindrical structures are there like this. Right? Using the cylindrical structures, we are going to convert thermal, that is, we are going to burn coal to generate fuel. I'm sorry, to generate electricity. Please tell me, in case of thermal power plant, are you requiring huge amount of labor, human labor, or are you going to spend huge amount of money on machines? You're going to spend huge amount of money on machines. So can I say shipbuilding? Example, shipbuilding, steel manufacturing, thermal power sector, money is spent a lot, but not on the labor, but on the machine. Can I call this as capital intensive sectors? All of you okay? Can I call this as capital intensive sectors? So we have labor intensive sectors as well as capital intensive sectors. But in recent times, exports have taken hit. Exports have taken hit. There is no doubt. But which sectors are taking hit? The sectors which have labor intensive. The sectors which are labor intensive. So look at it. Point number one, exports coming down is always a problem for us. Exports declining is always a problem because we want to earn dollars. Added to that, this export slowdown is happening in labor intensive sectors. Don't you think it also means there will be a problem related to employment situation in India? There will be a problem related to employment situation in India as well. So I hope you understand the importance of these kind of newspaper articles. Right? Simply don't read blindly everything. Do not read everything simply blindly. It will not give you any benefit. Read with connecting of these kind of dots. Done? So I hope you understand why should you connect these particular dots, what is the importance of all these newspaper articles, etc. Now let me go to the next concept, MSME. Micro, small and medium enterprises. MSME, micro, small and medium enterprises. What is a micro, small and medium enterprises? Very simple. Do you remember 1:5 formula? 1:5 formula. 1 crore, 5 crore, micro. 10 crore, 50 crore, small. 50 crore, 250 crore, medium enterprises. Very simple. How do you define micro, small and medium enterprises? As per the latest definition of Government of India, if the investment is up to 1 crore and the turnover is up to 5 crore, we'll simply call them as micro. If it is more than 1 crore, up to 5 crore, up to 10 crore, and turnover is more than 5 crore up to 50 crore, we'll call them as a small. And finally, if it is more than 10 crore up to 50 crore in case of investment, and more than 50 crore up to 250 crore in case of turnover, we'll call them as a medium enterprises. Micro, small, and a medium enterprises. In fact, in order to regulate and promote, Government of India has set up a ministry for MSME sector. There is a ministry of MSME sector in case of India. Now, what is the importance of MSME? Why does government give so much of importance to MSME sector in India? These are some of the reasons. Let's go point by point. Point number one, in case of India, there is a huge number of MSME units. How much? I'll give you data, but you should update. This is my recommendation. You should update this next year whenever it is given in the economic survey or budget if you're writing exams next year. As per economic survey, there are more than 6 crore MSME units in India, and all the 6 crore MSME units put together have generated more than 11 crore jobs. There are more than 6 crore MSME units, and all of them put together have generated more than 11 crore jobs in India. In terms of jobs, MSME accounts for huge number of jobs generated. Point number two, MSMEs, they are not just present in manufacturing, they are also present in the services sector. Is it okay? I'll repeat it. MSMEs, they're not just present in manufacturing, they're present even in services sector. Now, if you put together the manufacturing as well as service sector MSMEs, the total contribution to exports comes at around 40%. The total contribution, right, to manufacturing sector comes at around 45%. The total contribution to GDP comes at around 29%. So in terms of contribution to the exports, employment, right, or let's say the manufacturing output, even to the GDP, right, MSME sector holds a very important place in India. It holds a very, very important place. Apart from agriculture sector or after agriculture sector, in fact, it is the MSME sector which has generated the largest amount of jobs in India. Right, so these are some of the reasons why MSME sector is so important. Now, what are the concerns? What are the issues associated with the MSME sector? Point number one, lot of these MSME sector units are not registered. These are informal in nature. And when these are not registered informal in nature, don't you think they'll find it very difficult to get access to institutional credit? And if you ask me, sir, any example of MSME? I've not seen any MSME. My dear, please tell me, have you seen provisional store nearby you? Let me know. Have you seen a puncture shop? Puncture shop, right? A puncture shop near you? Have you seen small restaurants near you? And is there anybody in the classroom who says, sir, I've never seen any shop? Forget about more. I've not seen any shop in my life. I don't have any shop in my locality, right? I've not gone to any shop. My dear, the provisional stores that you have seen, all these are MSMEs, right? All these are basically MSMEs only, part of MSMEs, right? Based on the investment, we'll classify them into either micro, small, and investment. Micro, small, and investment. Okay, done? All of you okay with this? But their investment is not 1 crore. My dear, please look at the micro enterprise definition. Please look at the micro enterprise definition. The micro enterprise definition means what? Investment is less than 1 crore. All of you will agree, right? The investment, if it is less than 1 crore, it will automatically become a micro enterprise. So most of your provisional stores that you have seen in your locality, these are part of micro enterprises, by the way. Okay. So what are the issues? First one, most of them are not registered. These are informal in nature. They'll find it very difficult to get access to loans from banking sector, because if the bank has to give you loan, they will ask you for collateral, they will ask you for a registration, right, etc., right? So these will find it very difficult to get access to credit. Okay, that is the first point. Second point is because of the pandemic. Now I keep on throwing this particular term everywhere. You'll have to accept it, whether you like it or don't like it. Can I say because of the pandemic, MSME sector has been affected? Yes or no? Because of the pandemic, MSME sector was affected. Because of the pandemic, most of the service sector was affected. Because of the pandemic, infrastructure development was affected. Because of pandemic, right, even many of the other industries were affected. So pandemic has affected multiple sectors, multiple industries. MSMEs is one of them, right? So disruption in the economy, there was a lot of disturbance in the economy because of the pandemic. MSMEs have suffered because of it. Next one, there has been an issue of delayed payment. There has been an issue of delayed payment, right? What is this issue of delayed payment? Let's say hypothetically, I'm purchasing raw material from you and I would have a credit cycle of 45 days. Do you remember this credit cycle concept? Let me know. Sir, those who will ask me, sir, where have you discussed the concept of a credit cycle? Financial, financial market. I've discussed, right, financial market. In financial market, do you remember I discussed trades? Let me know. Do you remember I discussed commercial bills, commercial bills, right? Trade receivables, trade system. I'm sorry, not commercial bills, commercial papers. I'm sorry, commercial bills, not papers. Papers are issued by the company. Commercial bills are issued by the traders. Bills, not papers. Papers are issued by the company. Okay. So trade system, etc. Now let's say hypothetically. Let's say hypothetically, I will purchase raw material from you and I promise to make a payment in 45 days. Now, let's say because of the pandemic, because of the slowdown in the economy, because of, right, let's say recession in the economy, I am unable to sell goods and services. Or let's say today, I'm exporting a lot of goods or services to USA market. USA market is under a lot of pressure. I'm exporting to European market. It is also under a lot of pressure. Interest rates in USA and European market are increasing, which means I'm unable to export more and earn more. As a result of this, don't you think rather than paying you in 45 days, I might ask you 60 days for payment? Yes or no? Instead of 60 days, I might ask you 90 days a credit cycle. Can this happen? It has happened, by the way. Right? You may disagree, but it has happened. Why? I am facing issue. I am supposed to make a payment to you, but I am facing issue. I am unable to generate revenue. Right? Not my mistake. Because of various external and internal factors, my revenues have got affected. So automatically what I'll do, instead of paying you in 45 days, now I will ask you for 90 days credit cycle. Now please tell me, if credit cycle gets expanded like this, will it not put more pressure on your finances? That is the point I'm trying to make here. If the credit cycle, because of internal factors and external factors, will get expanded from 45 to 60, 60 to 90, 90 to 120, will it not be a higher pressure on your finances? Which means your finances that you want to use for working capital requirement, there is a pressure on that. There's a shortage of it, right? That definitely becomes a bigger problem for you. Next one, supporting infrastructure such as road mode of a transportation, port mode of a transportation, high-speed broadband connectivity, etc. All of these, there's a problem in India. In fact, all of you will agree. By the way, I'm talking about 2047 plan, right? Have you not seen in those articles where government of India says, I want to promote better road connectivity. I want to promote better, right, internet connectivity. I want to promote better port connectivity in India. Those who have not read it, please read those articles. You will understand what I'm talking about. Right. So government of India says, right, we need to promote railway infrastructure. We need to promote, right, road infrastructure, right, etc. In fact, even if you have a doubt regarding this, please do not panic. I will take up infrastructure chapter in this week itself, most probably day after tomorrow, right? Day after tomorrow or tomorrow, I'll take up infrastructure. I'll discuss what is a problem for road sector in India. I'll discuss what is a problem for railway sector in India when I take up infrastructure. Please don't worry about it. Okay, so we need to promote and have lot of supporting infrastructure such as broadband connectivity, railway connectivity, etc., etc. And finally, rising NPS. Right, non-performing assets are actually increasing, not only in right all the not only in a particular sector, even in MSME sector, NPS are increasing. Non-performing assets rising in one sector is always a problem. Okay, right. So these are some of the issues associated with micro, small, medium enterprises. Now, in order to address these issues, what kind of reforms have been implemented by the government? Let's go one by one. What kind of reforms have been implemented? First one, Mudra Yojana. Mudra stands for Micro Units Development and Refinance Agency. I'll repeat the statement. What is Mudra? Mudra stands for Micro Units Development and Refinancing Agency. Mudra. Now, under Mudra Yojana, Government of India, through banking sector, by the way, please remember this. Mudra Yojana is implemented by one more authority, SIDBI, Small Industries Development Bank of India. Right? Mudra is an agency. It is one authority. It has been set up by the government of India under one more bank, which is called as SIDBI, Small Industries Development Bank of India. SIDBI. It is under SIDBI. Now, what is the role of Mudra Yojana? Under Mudra Yojana, through these agencies, government will provide collateral-free loans. That's very important. Please remember this. Government will provide collateral-free loans to micro and small enterprises. I'll repeat the statement here. Through Mudra Yojana, that is, government has set up an agency under SIDBI, and this agency through banking sector will provide collateral-free loans, right? Through the banking sector, provide collateral-free loans to micro and small enterprises. What kind of loans are provided? There are three types of loans. First one is a loan of a value up to 50,000. Second one is a loan of more than 50,000 up to 5 lakh rupees. And the third one is more than 5 lakh rupees and up to 10 lakh rupees. And these three loan products are called as Shishu, Kishore and Tarun respectively. Shishu, Kishore and Tarun respectively. Right? So these three types of loan products without collecting any collateral, right? Government of India through Mudra agency will provide it to micro and small enterprises. So from which bank can I take a Shishu loan, Kishore loan or Tarun loan? You can apply for these loans from commercial banks, from regional rural banks, small finance banks, NBFCs, etc. Many of these banking institutions as well as non-banking institutions provide these kind of loan products. Done? So first one is Mudra Yojana. Come to the second one. 59-minute loan portal. So what is this 59-minute loan portal? What is the concept of 59-minute loan portal? Government says, rather than you going from one bank to another bank and inquiring about the loans and applying for the loans. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. Rather than you going from one bank to another bank to inquire for the loans and apply for the loans, what you can do is, there is a portal. Portal means website. All of you understand the term portal, right? They'll say, for example, UPSC. They'll say, for downloading your hall ticket, log on to this portal. Yes or no? I'll directly talk about UPSC now. Right? UPSC one fine day will send right a message, or let's say will send a mail to you and say, For downloading your hall ticket, log on to this portal. Portal means simply website. So there is a portal which has been set up by the government, and the name of the portal is basically PSB Loans. PSB Loans in 59minutes.com. PSB Loans in 59minutes.gov, something of this sort. Now, what is the use of this? The portal here. If you want to apply for a loan, you're a micro enterprise, you want to apply for a loan, you don't have to go from one bank to another bank. You can log into the portal. You can choose, I repeat, you can choose to which bank you want to apply for a loan. And in this particular portal, you can apply for a loan starting from 1 lakh rupees up to 5 crore rupees. Right? You will choose, let's say, State Bank of India, and you will apply for a loan of, let's say, 1 crore rupees, right, to State Bank of India. Now, next, understand the point here. The bank will not provide loans in 59 minutes. I'll repeat it. Do not expect that the bank will give you loan in 59 minutes. No. The bank will accept your application, preliminary acceptance, preliminary approval. The bank will either accept your application or reject your application in 59 minutes. All of you okay with this? I'll repeat it again. You will choose to which bank you want to apply for a loan. Log on to the portal, you do that. And you can apply for a loan from 1 lakh rupees up to 5 crore rupees. Now, once you apply for a loan, let's say to Punjab National Bank, the Punjab National Bank in the next 59 minutes will either accept your application or reject your application. They will not give you loan in 59 minutes. Please do not be under that impression. That particular portal is called as 59-minute loan portal. And final point regarding this, the 59-minute loan portal is integrated with one more aspect, one more feature, that is a CGT MSE, Credit Guaranteed Trust for Micro and Small Enterprises. Now, many of you will ask me, what is this CGT MSE? What is this concept of CGT EMSE? Let me explain it. Please listen carefully. Imagine you're a bank manager. You're a bank manager. Okay. Now, a micro enterprise, let's say me, a micro enterprise will come to you and I will apply for a loan. I will apply for a loan. As a bank manager, you are concerned that I may not repay the loan. I may default on the loan repayment. That's a natural concern, by the way. You're a manager, by the way, and I'm a micro enterprise. So you're concerned about my repayment. So what government says is, government will pay generally around 75% to 85%. From one loan to another loan, the number percentage will change. Don't buy heart. Government says you provide the loan to the micro enterprise, and if the borrower doesn't repay, if the borrower defaults and doesn't repay, I will guarantee 75% of the payment. Is the logic okay with all of you? I'll repeat it again. Right? Imagine you're a bank manager. I will apply for a loan to you. You're concerned whether I'll be in a position to repay or not. But government says, do not worry. If the micro enterprise doesn't repay the loan, 75% of the loan, I will guarantee the payment. Meaning what? If I don't repay 75% of that amount, government will give to you. Now, please tell me, if this kind of a guarantee is provided, don't you think banks will be more inclined to give loans to the micro enterprises? Yes or no? Does it make sense to you? Right? They'll be more inclined, because of course some of you will say, but sir, they might incur loss. My dear, in any kind of a loan, they might incur a loss. There is more inclination. The bank is prompted to provide more loans to the micro enterprises, small enterprises, etc. Because government is providing the guarantee. And government says, Through what I will provide guarantee to you? How do I provide guarantee? I've created a fund. I've created a fund, right? What is the fund name? Credit Guaranteed Trust for Micro and Small Enterprises. Okay, has been set up by the Government of India and SIDBI. Some of you are asking, what is SIDBI? It is one of the development banks in India. So the Small Industries Development Bank of India, that is a long form of SIDBI. Okay, for micro and small enterprises, under this credit guarantees in the range of 75 to 85% will be provided on the loans given by the banking sector for micro and small enterprises. Right, that is the concept of CGT MSE. Okay, trends earlier we have discussed it. Please revise it. Last point for the day: public procurement policy. Okay, last point for the day: public procurement policy. Now, what is this public procurement policy? Every year, Government of India or the departments of Government of India will procure from the market, will purchase goods from the market. All of you okay with this statement? Let me know, I'll repeat it again. On yearly basis, the central government or the public sector undertakings of a central government or the departments or the ministries of the central government, they will purchase a lot of goods from the market. So what kind of goods? They might purchase, right, let's say chairs, they might purchase, right, ACs, they might purchase, right, let's say the blackboards, etc., etc. The procurement will be huge. The government says, whatever we are procuring in 1 year, I repeat, whatever we are procuring in 1 year, 25% of it, 25% of my procurement, I will do it from the micro and small enterprises. I'll repeat the statement and let me know if there is any problem. Every year, the central government's authorities, the departments, the public sector undertakings, etc., they'll procure a lot of goods every year. So Government of India says, out of total procurement I do, total purchases I do in 1 year, 25% of it, I will purchase it from micro and small enterprises. This policy is called as public procurement policy. All of you okay with this? In fact, under this, certain amount will be reserved for MSCs owned by women entrepreneurs. Some of the procurement will be done from, right, the MSCs owned by SC/ST entrepreneurs. Even that kind of reservation is done within the public procurement policy. Okay, so let me stop the discussion here. Tomorrow we'll pick it up from the next slide. If there are any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we can stop the discussion for the day. Finance Minister has said that public banks will be reduced to 4 eventually. Is it only banks or all the companies under strategic sector? Whatever sectors are covered under the strategic areas, in all the sectors, maximum in all the sectors, government will have only 4 companies. Government will have only 4 companies. Okay, in all the sectors. If revenue generated by the state, how much share of that revenue goes to the government itself? Refer this question to stir. If revenue generated by the state, how much of that revenue goes to the state itself? What do you mean by that? And whatever question it is, don't you think that number will keep on changing from one state government to another state government? It will keep on changing from one state to another state. There is no common number here. Okay. But sir, investing in home countries will not create that much revenue in home country. Yes, unemployment will be created, but revenue will not be generated. Refer to sir. My dear, they want to provide. I'll take a very simple example. Right? Imagine I'm a company. I want to provide customer care services. I can invest money in USA, create customer care service company. I can create a customer service center within USA and provide the backend services. But rather than this, I will outsource this service to a company in India, which means I'm investing in India, I'm creating employment in India, and I'm not creating employment in USA. That is the point I was trying to make. Okay. Why SASF is being again? You read from the current affairs. Do not expect me to read everything. You also read some, right? I'll give you the pointers. You start reading. Okay. Public procurement process explain how reservation registeration. Right? Okay. Government of India says out of 25%, 4% of the procurement I will do it from, let's say, MSMEs owned by SC and ST entrepreneurs. Is not a reservation within public procurement policy. Okay. What is Namo train? Are Baba, you read. Right? Do not expect me to answer every question from current affairs. Then what are you people reading? Some of you are asking, is Nemo train a metro train? My dear, is it running between one city only or within one city? Is Namo train running within one city? Metros generally run within cities. Is it running within cities? Read, you will realize. Okay. Okay. Any other question? If all members not repaying the loan, burden for the government is high. What is the advantage about this repayment policy? If everybody doesn't repay, tell me, will you get loans again in the market? You're a micro enterprise. Do you think you will take only one loan? After that, you will not require any loan. Do you think that is how companies will work? If you take a loan and it is guaranteed by the government, you do not repay. Don't you think next time you go to a bank to apply for a loan, bank will reject your loan application? Think of that also. Please think of that. So argument is government is providing guarantees to ensure that first you will get access to loan. Some people will not repay. Government knows that. Some people will default. But it is unfair to say everybody is defaulting because in that case, government next year will not give any guarantees. Okay, done. Okay, so let me stop the discussion today here. Tomorrow we'll start. We'll continue again. We'll meet at 5 p.m. tomorrow. We'll meet 5 p.m. sharp at 5 p.m. We'll continue with the discussion. Take care. See you tomorrow. Good night.